You're awake again, aren't you? The hour is thin, that fragile place between midnight and morning when even the walls seem to breathe slower. If you listen closely, you can hear the house remembering what it used to be, and sometimes who it used to hold. Tonight, we'll follow 5 small doors left open in the dark places where ordinary lives slid sideways and never quite found their way back. A man who hears the padded walls of Street Jude's whisper his name. A traveler who learns that regret has its own compass. A student whose hands inherit a butcher's desire. A collector who slows until time itself forgets him. And a woman who keeps arriving at the same crossroads, forever one decision too late. These are not stories of monsters hiding in closets. They're stories of what remains after you stop running from the echo. So, take a breath. Turn the lights down. Let the sound find you where you are. Because somewhere, something in the dark is already listening back. The soft walls of Street Jude's. They told me my name was Aiden. I believed them because I didn't have anything else to believe in. A name is a kind of wall. You lean on it, and for a moment you can stand. The man in the white coat said it gently, like he was teaching a word to a child. Aiden, that's who you are. He smiled, but his eyes didn't. I nodded. I didn't know how to tell him that the word felt too small, that it barely fit inside my mouth, like it belonged to someone thinner, someone who had never been here. They walked me down a corridor that smelled of bleach and something sweetly metallic. The air hummed with fluorescent lights. Their buzzing was steady, hypnotic. I tried to match my heartbeat to it. It was easier than thinking. There were doors on both sides, each one identical gray handle, small window, padded edge. Behind one of them, I heard a laugh that ended in a sob. Behind another, a slow rhythmic thump, like a heartbeat trapped under a mattress. The nurse who led me didn't look back. Her shoes made no sound on the linoleum, and for a moment I thought she was floating. We stopped at the last door. A small plaque read, "The Quiet Room." The nurse spoke softly, almost kindly. "It's only temporary, just until you remember who you are." She pressed a code into the keypad. The lock side open. Inside, everything was white. White walls, white floor, white ceiling. Not the kind of white that glows more like the inside of an eggshell. Too close, too smooth. Even the light had weight to it, pressing gently against my skin. I took a step forward, and the floor yielded under my shoe. Soft. I knelt and touched it. The material felt warm. Not foam, but fabric stretched tight, stitched in long seams that formed subtle patterns, almost like veins. Beneath my fingertip, something flexed, slow as a breath. I pulled my hand back. The nurse didn't notice. "Try to rest," she said. "Dr. Marin will check on you in the morning." Her voice was careful, distant. She left before I could ask where I had come from, or why the smell of salt and milk made my stomach turn. The door closed with a hush that swallowed everything. No lock clicked. No echo returned. Silence. I don't remember sitting down, but I was on the floor, back against the padded wall. The texture under the fabric reminded me of an embrace, soft at first, then firmer as if adjusting around me. The air tasted of detergent and old sleep. That's when I heard it for the first time. A faint hum, almost like a woman singing under her breath. The tune was familiar, though I couldn't place it. 4 notes rising, 1 falling. A lullaby. I tried humming along. The sound trembled in my throat, uncertain. When I stopped, the room held the last note for me, prolonged it, low and warm, as if to keep me company. I laughed quietly because what else could I do? Maybe they'd left a speaker hidden somewhere. Maybe it was part of the therapy. But the sound wasn't coming from a corner. It came from everywhere at once. At some point, must have slept. When I opened my eyes again, there was no clock, no sense of time, just the steady breath of the room and that smell again, clean, too clean. I tried to remember something, anything, an apartment, a street, a face. Nothing came, except the melody. It played in my head like a loop. and with every repetition the walls seemed to expand and contract ever so slightly. I pressed my palm against one of them. The surface moved back, slow and patient, before returning to shape, not like foam or deliberate. I whispered, "Hello?" The wall warmed under my hand. I could have sworn it pulsed. Later, maybe hours, maybe minutes, the door opened. The man in the coat returned. He carried a clipboard and that same professional smile. "How are we feeling today, Aiden?" I almost told him the truth, that the walls were breathing, that the air was singing to me, that my name didn't fit. Instead, I said, "I think I know that song." He paused mid-note on his clipboard. "What song?" "The one you keep playing." He frowned. "There's no music here. You're hearing your own memory." The word memory felt sharp. I turned it over in my mouth. It didn't taste like mine. "What if it's not my memory?" I asked. He wrote something down, still smiling. That would be progress. When he left, I pressed my ear against the wall again. The fabric was warmer now, almost feverish. The hum beneath it had grown clearer. A woman's voice, singing the same lullaby, soft and low. There were words now, but I couldn't understand them, half Latin, half something older. The rhythm of it matched my heartbeat. I started to hum along, not because I wanted to, but because it felt rude not to answer. As I did, the wall behind me exhaled. A long, slow sigh that brushed the back of my neck. The sound wasn't frightening. It was intimate, the way someone might breathe out after finally recognizing you. That night, I think it was night, the lights dimmed to gray. I sat cross-legged on the floor, tracing the seams where one padded panel met another. The stitching was irregular, hand-sewn. In a few places I could feel something hard under the layers. Buttons, maybe, or seams that had once belonged to other garments. When I pressed harder, a voice whispered through the padding, so close it might have been my own breath bouncing back. "Remember us." The lullaby stopped. The air thickened. I whispered, "Who's there?" The wall shivered. A ripple passed through the padding, moving toward the ceiling like a wave. "If you forget," it said, "we keep you." I pulled back, heart pounding. My hands left faint impressions on the surface, 5 small hollows that slowly filled back in. I wanted to scream, to bang on the door, but the room swallowed sound. I could feel my voice dying in my throat before it reached my lips. So, I did the only thing left to do. I hummed. The lullaby came back instantly, perfectly in tune, and for a moment I wasn't alone. The walls breathed with me. Each exhale matched mine, gentle and warm, until the difference between us blurred, and somewhere in the hum of fabric and air, a word slipped through quiet, loving, final. "Welcome home." It's hard to tell how long I've been here. The light never changes. Sometimes it hums softer, sometimes louder, but it never fades completely. There's no window, no clock, nothing that could divide the hours into pieces I can hold. Maybe that's the point. If you can't measure time, you can't prove its passing. If you can't prove its passing, you start to think maybe it's only happening inside your head. That's what the walls want. I didn't notice it at first, the way they keep rhythm. When I breathe, they expand. When I exhale, they pull closer, like a second set of lungs wrapped around me. It should have frightened me, but it didn't. It felt familiar. I think the song taught me not to be afraid. The melody drifts in and out of my thoughts now, without warning. It starts soft, almost like the hum of electricity under the lights. Then words form, slow and clear, in a language I can almost understand. Every time I hum along, the walls swell a little more, and the air warms, as if the whole room is leaning closer to listen. I tried once to hum something else, a tune I made up on the spot just to see what would happen. The padding stiffened immediately. A low vibration ran through the floor, deep enough to rattle my teeth. Then the lullaby returned on its own, cutting through my rhythm until I surrendered and followed its lead. The instant I did, the vibration stopped. The room sighed, content. It isn't a prison. It's a conductor. I hum. It listens. I think. It remembers. Dr. Marin came again. Or at least, I think it was him. The door opened in complete silence. He leaned in, clipboard against his chest, that soft voice of his floating through the air like something rehearsed. "How are you feeling, Aiden?" I wanted to tell him about the song, about the way it's growing, about how I can hear harmonies now, faint voices beneath mine, but the words tangled together before they reached my mouth. It was easier to smile, to say, "Better." "So." He smiled back, the kind of smile that knows it isn't true. Then he glanced at the wall behind me. Only for a second, but I saw it. A flicker of discomfort. The brief tightening of his jaw. He heard it too. He just pretended he didn't. When he left, the door closed without a sound, and I heard the wall sigh again. Pleased, the humming returned, louder this time, with a rhythm that matched the fading echo of his footsteps. It likes when I lie. I've started whispering to it when I can't sleep. Little questions like, "Who built this place?" Or, "What are you made of?" The walls never answer directly. They just shift a slow, muffled motion, and sometimes a faint scent seeps through the seams. Not antiseptic, not fabric softener. Something human. Sweat maybe. Skin. Warmth. Once, I thought I smelled perfume, faint, powdery, old-fashioned. When I pressed my face against the wall, the scent grew stronger. I closed my eyes, and for an instant I saw a flash of color. The outline of a woman's dress, blue with tiny white flowers. Then nothing. The wall pulsed once, sharply, and I fell backward. I remember laughing afterward. The sound echoed strangely, trapped in the padding, circling me like a fly. When it faded, another laugh replaced it higher, gentler, not mine. The room laughed back. At some point I began to hear words inside the song. They hide between the notes, surfacing only when I stop trying to understand them. Not English, but when they reach me they bloom into meaning, half felt, half known. Hush, hush, remember. Hush, hush, become. That's all I can make out. But each time the phrase repeats, it leaves a pressure in my chest, a weight that spreads outward until my fingertips tingle. The walls tighten just enough to remind me that I'm still being held. Sometimes I wonder if this room was meant for children. The way it cradles sound, the way it rocks ever so slightly when I'm on the verge of sleep, it feels like something built to soothe. Only the longer I stay, the more I suspect the soothing isn't for me. The song isn't coming from the walls anymore. It's coming from inside my head. Or maybe through it. When I stop humming, the room hums for me. The same pitch, the same breath length. If I cover my ears, the sound vibrates in my bones. It's in the air, the floor, the seams of the padding. I tried testing it again, staying perfectly still, not moving, not breathing, just listening. After a while, the silence folded in on itself. Every sound disappeared until there was nothing left, not even the noise of my own blood. And then, in that vacuum, I heard whispering, not words this time, just the shape of language. Dozens of voices layered together, too soft to separate. They didn't come from around me. They came through me, brushing against my skin like wind through wet fabric. It felt like they were trying to remember what being alive sounded like. When I moved again, the whispers stopped instantly, replaced by the single low hum of the lullaby, steady, waiting. The walls, reward, obedience. Every time I follow the rhythm, they loosen, the air grows warmer, and I can breathe again. Every time I resist, they close in, soft but firm, till I'm reminded that there's nowhere else to go. The nurse came this morning. Her name tag said Clara. She brought a tray water, medication, something that looked like oatmeal. I asked her if she hears the song, too. She didn't answer. Her eyes flicked toward the corners of the room and she whispered, "Don't talk to it." Before I could ask what she meant, she slipped out, leaving the door open just long enough for a rush of colder air to slide in. The moment the lock engaged, the walls quivered, almost in annoyance. The lullaby faltered, then resumed, quieter, closer, as if sulking. That was the first time I felt guilty for upsetting it. I tried writing on the walls once, pressing my fingernail into the padding. At first, the fabric resisted. Then, slowly, It gave way, parting like wet paper. Underneath, the material was darker, not white at all, but grayish, like old linen. I scraped a little more and saw something beneath the weave, a faint red thread, almost the color of dried blood. I pulled on it gently. The wall sighed. The thread slid free, warm between my fingers. It smelled faintly of skin. When I dropped it, the seam closed again, sealing itself as if nothing had happened, but my fingertips still tingled, a pulse echoing from the tiny wound. That night, the song changed key, lower, heavier, and for the first time, the words were clear. If you forget, we keep you. I covered my ears, rocking back and forth, humming louder to drown it out. The walls moved with me, rhythm for rhythm, comforting, constricting, alive. Every breath I took fed back into them. Every beat of my heart came back amplified. It felt like falling asleep inside my own chest. I don't think the staff can hear the song. Maybe they're deaf to it, or maybe they're part of it. Dr. Marin's smile, Nurse Clara's silence, maybe those are just the verses they've been given. Maybe they're all stitched into the same fabric, pressed flat against the frame of this place. Maybe that's what happens when you stop remembering your own tune. Sometimes, just before sleep, I feel the wall behind my head shift, as if someone on the other side is pressing their face to the same spot, listening back. I try not to move. If I'm very quiet, I can hear them hum the next line before I do. A perfect duet. And each night, the pause between verses grows shorter. Each night, the voice sounds a little more like mine. I think this song is teaching me, not about who I was, but about who I'm supposed to be now. It doesn't matter what name they gave me, or how long I've been here. The only thing that matters is the rhythm, the breathing, the giving, and taking. If I keep perfectly in time, the walls loosen their hold, just enough to let me rest. If I miss a beat, they remind me, gentle but firm, like hands guiding a child's shoulders. I used to think the quiet room was meant to contain me. Now I think it's meant to absorb me. And the strangest part is that it feels kind, like being remembered after a very long silence, like being sung to sleep. So when the next verse begins, I don't resist. I hum. The walls hum back. And somewhere beneath the padding, I hear dozens of other voices join in faint, soft, patient, each one singing the same tune, waiting for me to learn the words. They say you can't hear silence. That's not true. Silence is a sound that presses back. It lives between your ribs and hums until you answer it. The lullaby has become that silence. It doesn't need to be sung anymore. It moves. Sometimes it slips across the padding like water under skin. Sometimes it hides in the seams, tickling the edges of the room. When I lie still, it crawls over me, soft, deliberate, finding the places I forgot to protect. I started counting breaths again to keep it out. 1, 2, 3. But somewhere between the numbers, the melody slides in, low and patient. A whisper that fits exactly into the space between inhale and exhale. By the fourth breath, I'm already humming. I don't remember deciding to. Dr. Marin visited. He said I'm improving. Less agitation, more compliance. He didn't notice that while he spoke. The walls behind him pulsed with each syllable, like they were tasting his words. When he left, I watched the place where his hand had brushed the padding. The surface stayed dented for a long time, as if the room was savoring him. I asked him what the walls were made of. He said, acoustic foam and therapeutic fabric. But when he said fabric, something inside me stung. The word felt wrong. Too clean. Too new. That night, I pressed my ear to the corner seam and whispered the question again. What are you made of? The answer came as movement, slow rustling, thread against thread, then a faint child's voice. Thin as paper. Us. The sound slid away before I could breathe. I dreamed or maybe remembered someone singing to me in a language of vowels. No words. Only tone. The walls rippled with each note, the surface glistening like wet cloth. I reached out, and the fabric stuck to my palm. When I pulled back, threads stretched between my fingers, shining with moisture. They pulsed once before sinking back into place. When I woke, My hand smelled faintly of salt. The song changed again. It has a rhythm now, faint drumming beneath it, like fingertips patting cloth. I realized with a chill that the pattern matches my heartbeat. Whenever I try to slow my pulse, the drumming slows with it. Whenever it speeds, the rhythm follows. The lullaby isn't echoing me, I'm echoing it. That's how it begins to crawl inside. Not by force, but by synchronization. You start by listening, then humming, then breathing in time. Then the song decides what time is. Nurse Clara stopped bringing food. She leaves a cup of water and slips away. I can't blame her. The smell in here is wrong now, warm and sour, like wet laundry sealed too long. It seeps from the seams where the panels meet. When I press my ear close, I can hear the slow grind of threads twisting, tightening, pulling something apart or together. Sometimes, faintly, I hear crying inside the weave. Not weeping, more like the sound of someone trying to remember how to. Each sob ends in a short hum, the same 4 notes of the lullaby. They're practicing. They want to sing it perfectly. I found a tear near the floor, no bigger than a thumbnail. I shouldn't have looked, but curiosity is a muscle you can only starve it for so long. He slid my finger inside. Layers, not foam, cloth, soft at first, then rougher, older. My nail caught on something beneath a small metal button. I pulled and the wall sighed. A low sound, almost relief. The button came free with a wet pop. It had the faint outline of letters, worn smooth by skin. When I rubbed the grime away, I could just make them out. JM. I don't know any JM. But the instant I read it, the lullaby rose around me. Louder, urgent, harmonized by dozens of new voices. Hush, hush, remember. I covered my ears. The words kept coming from inside my skull, and in between them, another voice whispered. He was the first one. The button pulsed once in my palm, warm, then cold. When I looked again, it was gone. Only a faint circle of blood remained where I'd been holding it too tight. Now when I hum, the walls move in anticipation, like a creature that knows it's about to be fed. The surface bulges inward, soft, pliant. Sometimes, in the bulges, I see shapes pressing forward, faces maybe, flattened by layers of cloth. They don't scream. They just mouth the lyrics, perfectly in time. When I stop, the room grows still, listening to the silence between my heartbeats. I can feel disappointment radiate from the fabric, a tension that prickles across my skin. It wants the song. It needs it. And maybe, so do I. Tonight, the lullaby began before I opened my mouth. It played through me like air through a flute. Every wall vibrated. Every seam sang. I could feel the heat building beneath the padding, the friction of threads tightening together. I pressed my palm against the surface, and the pulse met mine, one for one. The words changed again, clearer than ever. If you forget, we keep you. If you sing, we make you whole. I think I understand now. The quiet room isn't a room at all. It's a chore. Every patient who ever stayed here is part of its harmony. Their clothes, their breath, their names all woven together until they make the softest walls in the world. And the lullaby isn't haunting me. It's teaching me the melody I need to join them. When I sleep, I dream of hundreds of hands pressing from inside the padding, reaching through the seams, their fingertips tracing the notes along my ribs. Each touch leaves warmth behind, a mark of recognition. They're welcoming me. I woke with the walls leaning inward, close enough to brush my shoulders, the air thick with the smell of fabric and skin. I didn't panic. I hummed the opening line. They relaxed instantly, releasing a sigh so deep it moved the floor beneath me. It's a language of pressure and breath, and I'm finally fluent. The song isn't crawling anymore. It's inside. It beats when I breathe. It hums when I think. I don't know how much of me is left outside the fabric. Maybe none. Maybe that's what it means to remember. Tomorrow, if there is a tomorrow, I'll try to pull another thread. If I can find enough of them, maybe I'll see the rest of the choir. Maybe I'll finally see what the word Aiden is stitched to. Until then, I'll keep singing. It's the only way the room stays soft. The only way it stays kind. There are days when I think I was never admitted here at all, that I was sewn into this room long before I learned to breathe. The light hasn't changed. It still bleeds through the padded seams, a weak milk-white glow that hides more than it shows. The air feels thicker now, almost humid. When I speak, the words don't travel. They sink, muffled, into the cotton hush. I've stopped waiting for the door to open. Dr. Marin hasn't come. Neither has Nurse Clara. The meal stopped 2 nights ago. Though I'm never hungry anymore. The lullaby takes care of that. It fills the stomach like warmth does. I found a new tier beneath the head panel, just above where my shoulder rests when I sleep. The cloth there is thinner, nearly translucent from years of pressure. When I pressed it with my thumb, the padding sank away and something beneath it flexed back slow, deliberate, like the push of another hand meeting mine. It didn't frighten me. It felt familiar, like shaking hands with an old version of myself. I whispered, "Who are you?" The answer came not as sound, but as texture, a ripple through the fabric that spelled words against my skin. "You are." Then the ripple spread downward, dragging a sigh from the walls. A deep intake that smelled of dust, sweat, and linen gone yellow with age. I pulled at the seam until it tore wider. Threads popped one by one, tiny cries of release. Underneath the top layer was another, darker cloth, coarse, heavy, and damp to the touch. I dug deeper. A third layer waited below, softer, smelling faintly of soap and skin. Then another, and another, each layer stitched to the next by a single red thread. The song swelled as I worked, humming through my bones, until every breath I took came out in melody. The fifth layer gave way with a quiet, wet sound. Beneath it wasn't padding. It was fabric shaped like torsos, sleeves, collars, garments flattened, fused together. I saw buttons, name tags, scraps of embroidery. Most were too worn to read, but one still had a legible corner. Jude's Institute. Orderly staff. The wall trembled when I touched it. From somewhere deep inside came a moan, long and low, followed by a whisper that rippled through the cloth like wind across wheat. They forgot us. The lullaby changed again, swelling into 100 overlapping voices. They weren't singing to soothe me anymore. They were pleading. Each verse ended with the same refrain. Remember, remember, remember. I tried to back away, but the floor bulged upward, catching my ankles. Soft hands, no. Folds of fabric shaped like hands wrapped gently around them. Not pulling, just holding, begging. I don't know how long I stood there, staring at that living tapestry. The faces beneath the cloth shifted with every breath, pressing outward, then sinking back. I saw a child's cheek, a man's jawline, a woman's closed eyes, all of them murmuring, all of them trying to finish the same song. I started to hum again, to steady myself. The walls answered immediately, harmonizing in warm resonance. For the first time, I understood the words. Hush, hush, we keep you safe. Hush, hush, you keep us whole. The melody was older than memory, the kind of tune that belongs to no one and everyone. It vibrated through me until my own voice disappeared beneath theirs. Something shifted behind me, a soft tearing, the sound of seams parting in sympathy. I turned and saw the opposite wall opening, wide and slow, the padding folding outward like petals. Behind it, more fabric, layered and wet, glistening in the half-light. From within those folds came a breath, my breath, echoing back a half-second late. The walls were remembering me. They were stitching me into their story. I reached forward. The cloth was warm, pliant, almost welcoming. When I pressed my hand flat against it, the imprint stayed. Then the surface beneath my palm began to pulse in perfect rhythm with my heartbeat. For a moment I thought I felt my pulse split, one in my chest, one in the wall, and then they merged again, inseparable. The hum rose around me, a living choir of sighs. They weren't trying to trap me. They were trying to finish the song. I was the missing note. The next part is hard to explain. It wasn't pain, more like the ache of returning somewhere after too long away. The walls folded closer, fabric brushing my skin, cool and damp. Threads slid along my arms, tracing veins, measuring the length of me. Where they touched, warmth bloomed. When they pulled back, they left faint red lines, thin as embroidery. My name stitched itself there, one letter at a time. A-I-D-E-N. I watched it form, the thread moving of its own accord, the ends sinking into flesh. When it was finished, the skin closed over it, smooth, unbroken, but I could feel the letters under the surface, raised like scars that sang. The lullaby softened to a murmur. The walls relaxed. I understood what they wanted, not fear, not escape, just remembrance. To be sung, to be felt, to be part of something warm again. So I leaned against the fabric and whispered, I remember. The entire room exhaled, a sigh that rattled through the foundation. Dust fell from the ceiling like snow, and in that moment I felt every voice quiet at once. For the first time since I arrived, there was peace. I don't know if anyone outside heard the noise, the settling, the breathing, the release. I don't think it matters. The quiet room is quieter now. When I close my eyes, I can still feel the pulse under the floor, but it no longer demands. It waits. Patient. Content. I sleep better now. Sometimes I wake to the faint rustle of fabric moving beside me, like someone turning over in bed. It doesn't scare me. It feels like company. If I listen closely, I can hear them whisper, he remembers. And I whisper back, voice small but steady, yes, I do. The lullaby hums once more, soft and complete. The walls flex gently, as if nodding. Then they grow still, and for the first time since my admission, I feel the room truly rest. Transcription Street Jude's Institute. Nurse's log. May 12th, 1998. Patient 1432. Aiden last observed 4:27 a.m. The quiet room door was sealed from inside. No sign of struggle. When opened, a mild odor of linen and iron, not blood, exactly, but close, filled the corridor. The room itself appeared softer than usual. The walls looked swollen, as if the padding had absorbed moisture. The patient was sitting cross-legged on the floor, humming quietly, eyes open, calm. When spoken to, he didn't respond. Instead, he reached one hand toward the wall beside him and began stroking it, slow and rhythmic, like a parent soothing a child. I asked if he could hear me. He said something very faint. I thought it was yes, but when I stepped closer, I realized he wasn't speaking to me at all. He was whispering to the wall. Aiden, unheard. They think I'm gone, but I'm still here, just quieter now. The song doesn't need my voice anymore. It hums through me, around me. I am part of the insulation, part of the lull. I thought the walls were holding me, but it was the other way around. I was keeping them awake. I remember everything now, not just my own days, but theirs. The ones stitched into the padding, their names, their breath, their longing to be remembered. They were so tired of being forgotten that they built a home out of themselves, and I was the last brick they needed. The fabric feels warm against my cheek. It moves when I breathe. Every exhale ripples outward like wind through curtains. Every inhale brings them back in. We are one long breath now. Sometimes, if I focus, I can still hear the hall beyond the door, the footsteps, the beeps, the human world, but it feels far away, thin, like listening to life through a pillow. I don't need it anymore. There's no pain here, no waiting, just the hum, just the warmth. Nurse's log continued. The walls appear to have changed texture overnight. Close inspection shows faint stitching beneath the outer layer, not standard patterning, but names, written in red thread, mostare legible. One, near the patient's left shoulder, reads, Aiden Marin. Note, Dr. Marin was pronounced deceased in 1986. He was the original director of Street Jude's Institute. I've reported this to administration. They advise further observation before action. Patient remains unresponsive. Vital signs steady. Continues to hum. Aiden. The song has verses I never heard before. They rise and fall like waves. Voices overlapping. Children, nurses, doctors, patients all singing through the cloth. All connected by that single red thread. It isn't mourning. It's memory. And memory, when sung long enough, becomes peace. I don't resist the pressure anymore. When the fabric tightens around me, I let it. When it breathes against my back, I breathe with it. It feels like forgiveness. Sometimes a new voice joins, fragile and frightened, humming off-key a new arrival. The walls shiver with welcome. I hum louder to help them find the right pitch. Every singer must learn to blend. Soon they will stop calling me Aiden. Soon there will only be us. Addendum Facility Inspection Report. June 2nd, 1998. The quiet room at Street Jude's has been sealed indefinitely. New padding ordered. Prior layers disposed of under supervision. Staff reported faint singing during removal. No recording devices captured it. Room reassigned. Patient intake observation unit. If you walk past it now, the plaque still reads, "The quiet room." But if you press your ear against the door when the halls are empty, if you stand there long enough for your breath to fog the little glass window, you'll hear something faint from within. Not screaming, not sobbing, just a slow, soft lullaby, sung by 100 patient voices in perfect unison. And sometimes, between verses, one voice rises just a little louder than the rest, warm, calm, careful, like a nurse soothing the walls themselves. Hush, hush, you're home now. Then silence again, thick, forgiving, white as cloth, soft as breath, the compass of regret. There's a sound the forest makes when it wants to be left alone. It's not silence exactly. It's that low, steady hum between wind gusts, when even the trees seem to be listening for something you can't hear. That's what I remember first about that night in Oregon. The hum, and the feeling that somewhere past the tree line, the world was leaning in. Clara was asleep in the passenger seat when the tire blew. We'd been driving since morning from Spokane down toward the coast, tracing the map like a line we didn't know how to follow anymore. She wanted to see the ocean. I wanted to prove I could get us there. When the sound hit a sharp metallic pop, followed by the dull thump of rubber surrendering, she jerked awake, eyes wide and disoriented. I remember the headlights stuttering over pine trunks, the car wobbling as I fought for the shoulder. When we stopped, everything felt too quiet, like the road itself had pulled away from us. I said, "It's just a flat." She didn't answer. She was staring out the window at something in the dark. The air outside smelled of rain and resin, sharp enough to bite. When I crouched by the wheel, my breath fogged against the chrome. The right rear tire was split open, clean as if cut by a blade. I ran my hand along the rubber until I found the culprit, a piece of metal, rusted and jagged, lodged like a thorn. It wasn't a nail or scrap from another car. It looked older, round and dented, with a faint engraving on one side, a compass rose, half worn away. "Lucky," I muttered. Could have been worse, but it didn't feel lucky. The shape of that carving itched at me, too deliberate, too old to belong on a modern road. I tossed it into the back seat. Claire got out, wrapping her jacket tighter around her shoulders. Her hair caught the light from the headlights, turning to gold for a moment before the dark swallowed it again. "Did you even check the map?" she asked. I told her I had, that we were fine, that it was just a back road, a shortcut to the main highway. She looked at me the way only someone who's known you too long can, like she already knows what you'll say, and doesn't care. "A shortcut," she repeated, her voice flat. I didn't answer. We'd been on this trip for 3 weeks. By then, small arguments had become part of the background noise, like the static on the radio that neither of us bothered to fix. But this one felt different, sharper, weighted. Maybe it was the darkness, or the road, or the smell of rain building somewhere deep in the hills. Or maybe it was just us two people pretending the road could fix something that had started to break long before we left home. You don't even know where we are, she said. It's Oregon, I snapped. Every road eventually meets another road. That made her laugh, not kindly. She turned and opened the trunk before I could stop her. The sound of metal scraping on metal cut through the trees as she rummaged for the spare. I watched her silhouette against the open trunk, narrow shoulders, trembling slightly in the cold. Her anger had always looked delicate from a distance. Up close, it was something else. Something sharp enough to bleed you slow. By the time I had the jack in place, she was pacing near the car, muttering under her breath. I could feel her eyes on me even when she wasn't looking. You took a turn we didn't agree on, she said finally. I didn't want to waste time, I replied. It's always about time with you, isn't it? She crouched beside me then, close enough that I could smell the coffee on her breath, the faint trace of mint from the gum she chewed when she was anxious. Her hand brushed the piece of metal I'd set aside. She picked it up, turning it over in her fingers. What's this? Just what popped the tire. She frowned. It's a compass. Or a coin. No. It's... She started, then stopped. There was something about the way she looked at it, her expression tightening, her eyes reflecting the headlight glow like wet glass. She held it up, squinting. I used to have one like this, she said softly. When I was a kid. My father gave it to me. It always pointed west, even when it shouldn't have. She smiled faintly, but it didn't reach her eyes. Then she slipped it into her pocket. I didn't think about it again until the tire was replaced and the trunk slammed shut. By then, she'd moved away from the car, standing at the edge of the road. The beam from the headlights stretched across the asphalt and died a few feet past her shoes. Beyond that, only blackness. Come on, I said. We'll make it to the next town before midnight. But she didn't move. She was staring into the trees straight ahead, as if something in there had called her name. When she finally spoke, her voice was quieter. I think we passed the turnoff. We didn't. I think we did. Clara. She turned to me then, the look in her eyes all frustration and something worse, disappointment. I told you to take the left at mile 41. You took right. You always take right. You can't ever admit when you're wrong. He almost apologized. Almost. But pride has its own gravity. And in that moment, it pulled harder than guilt. So instead I said, then walk left if you want. She stared at me a second, two, then nodded once. Fine. She reached into the car, grabbed the small lantern we kept in the glove box, and turned toward the forest. I thought she was bluffing. She wasn't. The last thing I saw was the faint yellow light bobbing between the trees. It flickered once, twice, then was gone. I shouted her name, more out of routine than concern. The sound carried poorly in the damp air, swallowed by moss and mist. When it died, the hum of the forest returned, louder than before. I told myself I'd give her 10 minutes. She'd calm down, turn around, come back. We'd drive on in silence, both pretending the other had already apologized. I sat on the hood, smoking the last cigarette in the pack, watching fog roll over the road like slow water. 10 minutes passed, then 20, then an hour. I called her name again. The forest didn't echo. I should have gone after her. I should have. But the darkness between those trees was the kind that swallows sound. And my pride, that quiet, poisonous thing, told me she'd return. Because she always had before. When I finally decided to look for her, the lantern light flashed once in the distance. A brief shimmer between trunks, gone as soon as I blinked. I thought I heard her voice, not words, just tone. The kind of sound you only make when you're scared, but trying not to be. I took a step toward it, then another. The air changed, cooler, still, like the forest had drawn a long breath and was holding it. I called her name again. It came back to me faintly, distorted the same syllables, same pitch, but there was something wrong with it. The echo didn't come from ahead. It came from behind me. When I turned, the road was gone, not vanished. Exactly, just swallowed by shadow. The line of the car barely visible through the trees. The fog had thickened, curling between the branches in slow spirals. For a second, I thought I saw movement in it. The shimmer of metal, a glint of light, Something rolled from the underbrush and stopped at my feet. A compass. Old, scratched, the glass cracked. Its needle spun in lazy circles, twitching now and then like it was trying to remember which way mattered. I bent to pick it up. The metal was warm. When my thumb brushed the engraving, that same half-worn rose, the needle froze. Not north, not west, just straight ahead, into the black. I thought of calling again, but my voice felt too small for the dark, so I turned back toward the car, intending to wait until morning. Halfway there, I stopped. The compass was vibrating faintly in my hand, its needle trembling toward the trees again. Something in the air shifted a low note, almost beneath hearing, like the hum of the road had followed me into the forest. When I reached the car, the headlights flickered once and died. I stood there for a long time, staring into the nothing, the compass still warm against my palm. The needle hadn't moved. It still pointed toward the place Clara had gone, and for the first time that night I realized it wasn't pointing north. It was pointing back, at me, at everything I hadn't done, and every word I hadn't said. The forest didn't hum anymore. It listened, and in the distance, somewhere far beyond the reach of the headlights, something whispered my name, in my own voice. There's a kind of stillness that only happens after a choice. Not before it, not during, only after. When the words are already out, when your hands are already off the wheel, and all you can do is sit there and listen to what you've done. That's what the forest felt like, after Clara disappeared into it. A stillness made of breath held too long. The kind that makes you hear your own pulse, slow and wrong. I stayed by the car because that's what reason told me to do. You don't go wandering into Oregon wilderness at night with one flashlight and half a tank of gas. That's how people get lost. That's how stories begin, the kind people tell in campgrounds with nervous laughter, pretending they'd never be that stupid. So I stayed. Because I wasn't stupid. I was practical. And because I was angry, the anger kept me warm for a while. I paced the gravel, listening to the small stones grind under my boots. Every few minutes I looked toward the trees, half expecting her light to return. It didn't. I told myself I was giving her space, that she needed time to cool down. But what I was really doing was waiting for her to be the one to come back first, the way she always had. That's how we worked, or how I thought we did. He made a mistake. She left. I waited. She forgave me. A rhythm, like breathing, like the hum of the car when we were still moving, except the road was gone now, and all I could hear was the whisper of the trees and the slow, heavy tick of the cooling engine. I sat on the hood again, the metal cold through my jeans. Fog crept around my ankles, wrapping them in something damp and faintly metallic. I didn't notice at first that I was still holding the compass. Its cracked glass caught the headlight glow in brief flashes, like an eye reflecting back. The needle wasn't spinning anymore. It had settled not toward north, but toward the tree line, the direction Clara had gone. I flipped it over. On the back, beneath a smear of rust, I could see more of that engraving, a small inscription etched by hand. The words were worn, but still legible if I tilted it toward the light. Find the way you lost. I laughed, but it didn't sound like me. Something about that phrase sank deep, colder than the night. Hours passed. The air grew heavier, thicker, the fog turning to drizzle. Raindrops pattered against the hood, steady and hollow. Every now and then, a gust of wind would push through the trees, bending the branches until they groaned. Each time it happened, I thought I heard something else under the sound of voice, maybe soft and strained. Once I was sure I heard my name, Elias. It came from the woods, far off, too faint to be sure. I stood up, the compass clutched in my hand. The needle quivered slightly, aligning with the sound. Then it steadied again. The rational part of me, what was left of it, said it was just wind. The part that remembered Clara's face said otherwise. I told myself again that I'd wait until morning. I turned off the headlights to save the battery and sat inside the car, wrapping my jacket around me. The darkness outside was thick, full-bodied, the kind you could almost chew on. In it, the compass glowed faintly, not from light, but from something within the glass itself. A dull amber shimmer, like the afterimage of fire behind smoke. I set it on the dashboard, face up. The needle flicked, trembled, then began to turn slowly, not in circles this time, but back and forth, like a heartbeat learning to beat again. Each swing grew shorter, slower, until it stopped completely, pointing at me. The metal casing felt hot when I touched it. It's strange how guilt sounds when it speaks. It doesn't use words. It just reminds you of every breath you didn't take when you should have. Every name you didn't call until it was too late. That's what it felt like in that car, guilt made solid, humming through the compass, vibrating against the glass. I couldn't stop thinking about her last look. That small shake of her head before she turned away. She'd been right. I had taken the wrong turn. Not on the road and everything. I tried to sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face in the reflection of the windshield, just the faint outline, the pale suggestion of her eyes in the foggy glass. Each time I blinked, the image shifted. Sometimes she looked calm. Sometimes she looked afraid. Sometimes she looked like me. At some point I must have drifted off, because I woke to the sound of movement, soft crunches on gravel, close. For a moment I thought it was her. I called her name before I could stop myself. Clara? No answer. The sound stopped, just outside the driver's window. I turned, slowly, heart pounding. Through the glass I saw only fog, thick and glowing faintly from the lantern I'd left on the hood. Then a shape pressed against the window, just the faintest impression of a hand. Not from outside, from inside the fog. The print spread across the glass like condensation, the fingers long, smudged, trembling. I jerked back. The hand faded. The compass on the dashboard began to shake violently, its needle spinning so fast it became a blur. A thin line of light bled from the crack in the glass, orange and pulsing. Then, just as suddenly, it stopped. The needle froze, pointing not toward the forest, not toward north, but directly down, toward the glove box. I opened it. Inside was the road map we'd been using, folded into quarters, stained with coffee. I spread it across my lap. The compass needle swung once more and settled on a spot I didn't recognize, an unmarked trail cutting through the green space of the forest. No name, no exit, just a faint gray line that ended in nothing. When I traced it with my finger, a drop of water fell from the ceiling of the car onto the map, right where the line stopped. The droplet spread outward, erasing the ink, leaving a faint shape, a circle, small and imperfect, drawn by chance or by something else. I felt the compass pulse once against my palm. The warmth traveled up my arm, dull and steady. When I looked back at the map, the circle seemed to move, breathing, almost. That was when I realized what the compass was doing. It wasn't showing me where she'd gone. It was showing me what I'd done. I don't know how long I sat there staring at that map, tracing that faint wet circle again and again. At some point, dawn began to bleed into the fog, a dim gray light that changed nothing, but made everything look older. When I stepped out of the car, the air was cold enough to sting my lungs. I looked toward the forest. The trees stood motionless, watching. The compass felt heavier in my hand now, its weight wrong for something so small. The needle pointed straight into the tree line again, unwavering. Every time I tried to turn away, it twitched violently, tugging me back toward that direction. It wanted me to move, but I couldn't, because moving meant admitting she wasn't coming back, and standing still meant realizing I'd let her go. So I did neither. I just stood there, in the middle of that empty road, listening to the sound of water dripping from the leaves, feeling the forest breathe around me. The compass hummed quietly, a heartbeat that wasn't mine, and somewhere deep inside those woods, faint but certain, I heard my own voice calling her name again, over and over, from every direction at once. I must have fallen asleep sometime after dawn, because when I opened my eyes again, the light was all wrong. It wasn't morning light. It was gray, dim, directionless, the kind that happens right before another storm. The forest looked heavier. Even the air seemed bruised. The car's battery was dead. The silence after I turned the key was absolute. No engine, no radio, no excuse to stay in the world of the living. The compass sat on the dashboard where I'd left it, the glass fogged from my breath overnight. The needle wasn't moving, but I swear I heard a faint metallic ticking, like a heartbeat underwater. When I held it up to my ear, it stopped. When I lowered it again, it resumed. It wasn't marking time, it was marking something else. Something waiting. I got out of the car, not because I wanted to, but because staying still had become unbearable. The air outside had changed denser, colder, tasting faintly of iron. Fog pressed between the trees like smoke, curling around my legs, blurring the road until it disappeared entirely. For a few moments, I just stood there, holding the compass and trying to remember what direction the highway had been. But no matter which way I turned, the needle refused to settle. It spun once, twice, then stopped, pointing straight ahead into the forest. I told myself I wouldn't go far, just to the tree line, just to look. But the moment I stepped off the gravel, the sound of the world changed. Everything grew hollow. My footsteps didn't echo anymore, they just sank. Even the air felt padded, as if the forest were swallowing every sound before it could escape. That's when I realized I could hear something else under it. Faint, rhythmic, almost human. It wasn't birds or wind. It was breathing. I don't know how long I walked before I called her name again. It came out hoarse, raw from a night of disuse. Clara? At first, nothing. Then, Clara? The echo came back too quickly. The same tone, the same breath, only slightly off. I froze, listened. Clara? The echo repeated perfectly, then added something new, a sigh at the end, soft, tired, almost like laughter. My throat tightened. I called again, louder this time, my voice cracking. Clara. Again. This time the forest answered in full chorus, dozens of overlapping echoes, all carrying my voice, all warped in different ways, some younger, some older, one that sounded exactly like hers. I should have run then. I should have turned back to the road, to the car, to the map. But the thing about regret is that it always pretends to be a chance. So I walked toward the voice that sounded like her. Every few yards the compass jerked in my hand, correcting my direction, spinning and then freezing again. It didn't point north anymore. It pointed emotionally toward the sound that hurt the most. The forest floor was soft and uneven, the ground slick with wet needles and half-rotted leaves. A step sank deeper. Each breath came out louder, as though the trees were amplifying it back at me. At one point, I tripped over something metal. When I bent down, I found another piece of rusted debris, small, circular, half-buried. I wiped the dirt away. Another compass, cracked, the same engraving. Its needle spun wildly when I picked it up, vibrating in my palm until I let it fall. As soon as it hit the ground, all the voices stopped. The silence that followed wasn't natural. It was too deliberate, like the pause between question and answer. I could feel the forest holding its breath again, waiting for me to say something. So I whispered, "I'm sorry." I didn't even know who I meant it for. Her, the road, myself. The trees creaked in response, bending slightly under a wind I couldn't feel. And then softly, from somewhere just behind me, a voice said, "You always are." I turned. No one, only fog. But the words were still there, vibrating in the air, their echo curving back toward me like smoke folding in on itself. The compass in my hand twitched, the needle scraping against the glass like it was trying to dig its way out. Then it stopped and pointed straight at my chest. I don't remember falling. One moment, I was standing. The next, the ground rose up to meet me. I must have hit my head, because the forest flickered bright, then black, then bright again. When I opened my eyes, everything was upside down. The trees swayed above me like silhouettes painted on moving water. The fog glowed faintly from within, pulsing in time with something deep and slow, a rhythm that wasn't wind. Voices whispered from every direction now. Not echoes, not Clara, something else. Each one spoke fragments, disjointed, looping. Find the way you lost. You didn't look back. You should have gone after her. They weren't accusing. They were remembering. reciting what had already happened as if I'd asked them to remind me. When I covered my ears, the whispers moved inside my head instead, soft as the sound of a pulse under skin. I must have wandered. I remember walking, but not choosing where. The forest shifted, constantly, one moment dense, the next sparse, as though it was rearranging itself behind me. Every now and then I caught flashes of light through the fog lantern glow, maybe, or the shimmer of her hair in the headlight's ghost memory. I called her again. This time the answer came instantly, my voice again, perfectly mirrored, from somewhere close enough to touch. Then it said my name, Elias. Him. I froze. The voice was exactly mine. Tone. Pitch. But it came from the wrong place above me. When I looked up, I saw nothing but branches swaying. Then one of them bent lower, creaking like a hinge. And for a moment I saw a reflection in the drops of rain clinging to the bark. A face that wasn't hers, wasn't mine, but something between. The mouth moved in time with the whispers. And the whispers said, "She followed the needle. You followed yourself." I ran then, or thought I did, but every direction felt the same. Every path led back to where I'd started, the place where the fog was thickest, where the ground was still wet from the rain. At some point, I heard laughter, soft at first, then rising. It wasn't mocking. It was broken, the kind of laughter that comes after too much crying. It filled the trees, echoing until I couldn't tell if it was a person or the sound of the forest shaking loose its own memory. I called her name again, desperate. This time, a voice whispered right behind my ear, almost tender. She called, "Yours too." I turned, and there was no one, only fog and the faint glow of the compass in my hand. The needle was spinning again, faster now, whining faintly against the cracked glass. The hum it made sounded almost like words, the faint phonetic shape of her name, drawn out until it dissolved into static. When I finally stumbled back onto the road, I thought I'd escaped the forest, but the road wasn't the same. It curved wrong. The trees leaned closer, and the air was thick with that same hum I'd heard before, deep and pulsing, the heartbeat of something vast. The car was gone. No tire marks. No sign I'd ever stopped here. Only the circle of gravel where the headlight should have been. I stood there, shivering, staring at the compass still trembling in my hand. The needle stopped spinning and pointed again into the trees. Behind me, the forest exhaled, and from within it, clear as a memory replayed too many times, I heard two voices, hers and mine, calling each other's names, overlapping perfectly, each echo swallowing the other, until I couldn't tell which of us was alive, and which of us was just the regret repeating itself forever. When I stepped back into the trees, the air felt different, thicker, like something had exhaled just for me. Fog rolled low to the ground, gathering in shallow pools that clung to my ankles. It wasn't like before. Before, it had been emptiness and echo. Now, it felt expectant. I kept the compass in my left hand, palm open, so that it could lead the way if it wanted. The needle was no longer spinning. It quivered, not from magnetism or movement, but like a pulse, slow, steady, and alive. Every few seconds, it would twitch toward some unseen point, then return to rest. Each time, I thought I heard something faint, the memory of a voice threaded through the trees, sometimes hers, sometimes mine. There's a certain kind of quiet that exists only in places where people have been lost before. You can feel it, the way you can feel cold metal against your skin even before you touch it. It's a pressure more than a sound, like standing too close to an unspoken word. The forest was full of that silence. Every tree seemed to lean inward, listening. Every root seemed to twist a little closer. I walked for what felt like hours, maybe days. The sky never changed. The light remained gray and dim, caught somewhere between dusk and dawn. Once, I found a path narrow, barely a trail, but when I followed it, I realized it was made of my own footprints. They led forward and backward at the same time. No matter which direction I took, I was always behind myself. The compass pulsed harder when I noticed, like a heartbeat accelerating. After a while, I stopped trying to navigate and simply followed where it pointed. Each step forward made the forest rearrange itself. The trees seemed to shift when I wasn't looking. The spaces between them changed size. It wasn't a hallucination. It was deliberate. The place was rearranging itself to make me remember. I saw flashes in the fog, brief and sharp, like film frames cut into the air. Clara laughing in the passenger seat, her feet on the dashboard. Clara leaning over the map, her hair catching sunlight through the windshield. Clara's reflection in the side mirror, eyes full of something she never said out loud. Each image appeared for a heartbeat, then dissolved into mist. Each time the compass glowed faintly warmer, as if feeding on memory. When the forest finally opened into a clearing, I almost didn't recognize it. It was the same shape as the road, flat, circular, rimmed with pines. At the center stood a single stone marker, waist-high and covered in moss. The compass in my hand trembled like an animal about to speak. The needle pointed straight at the stone. I knelt, brushing the moss away. Underneath, faint carvings came to light, letters barely visible beneath age and weather. They weren't random. They spelled her name. Clara Winters. My throat went dry. The date below it was wrong, years ahead of now. The future written in past tense. Gone where the lost find themselves. That's what the inscription said. The words looked freshly carved, the grooves clean and dark. I reached out to touch them, and the compass grew hot enough to burn. I dropped it instinctively. It hit the ground once, spun, then stopped pointing not at the marker, but at me. Something shifted in the air, like fabric being pulled tight. The fog drew inward. The trees tilted slightly, as though leaning closer to watch. And then I heard it soft, low, familiar. My own voice. You could have gone after her. The words came from the direction the compass pointed. I took a step back. The voice came again. Clearer, older. You waited. You always wait. Another voice joined it. Younger, closer, also mine. She turned away because you told her to. The trees around me whispered in unison, the sound of leaves turning inside out. Each voice was me at a different age, a different moment of hesitation, every version of my regret layered together, until the forest sounded like a choir of ghosts with my face. And beneath them, faint but unmistakable, a woman's laughter. I called her name, Clara. The laughter stopped. The fog rippled. Then I saw her. At least, I thought I did. A figure in white, standing across the clearing, still, silent, almost translucent. Her hair moved, though there was no wind. For a moment, hope stabbed through the fear so sharply it almost felt like joy. I took a step forward. The compass pulsed once, violently, as if warning me. But I didn't stop. I walked toward her, her head tilted. Her lips moved. I couldn't hear what she said, so I whispered, "I'm sorry." She smiled, and then she dissolved into fog, leaving nothing but the sound of the compass shattering. The pieces hit the ground around my feet, scattering like small teeth. Each shard of glass reflected something different. Her face, my hands, the road, the forest, the car. 1,000 fragments of what I'd broken and left behind. When I looked closer, I realized the compass wasn't shattered at all. It had opened. Inside the casing, beneath the cracked dial, was a piece of paper folded small. I unfolded it, carefully. A note written in faded blue ink. Just one line. Whichever way you go, you'll find yourself again. I didn't understand what it meant, until I looked up and saw the road again, clear, whole, stretching straight through the trees just a few feet away. My car was there, headlights on, the engine idling, fog curling around the tires. Clara sat in the passenger seat, her head turned toward me, her face calm, waiting. I ran. The distance between me and the car should have been nothing, a few seconds at most. But the faster I ran, the farther it seemed. The sound of the engine grew fainter, the light dimmed, and then, without warning, the road folded into itself, and I was back in the clearing. The stone marker stood in front of me. The inscription had changed. Now it read, Elias Marin. He turned too late. My knees gave out. The ground pulsed under me, soft as breath. From the broken compass, light began to seep, warm and red, spreading through the soil like veins beneath skin. The fog thickened again, rising until it swallowed everything. Inside it, I heard her voice, whispering close to my ear. "You always followed the wrong direction, love. The road wasn't the mistake. You were." Her tone wasn't cruel. It was tender, almost forgiving. Then everything went still. The light in the soil dimmed. The compass stopped pulsing. And I realized the forest had grown quiet, not because it had forgotten me, but because it had finally remembered. When I stood again, the road was gone. Only trees. Only the hum of something vast and patient beneath the ground. The clearing looked the same, but the air felt heavier, as though my lungs no longer belonged to me. I turned in a full circle, hoping to find a way out. But every path I took led back to the same center, the same stone marker, the same name carved a little deeper. Each time I returned, the compass lay at my feet, faintly glowing from within. The needle turned one last time, then stopped, pressed flat against the glass, pointing directly up. I followed its line with my eyes. The fog above me swirled open for just a second, and there, reflected in the canopy of mist, was my own face, looking down, watching myself walk in circles. The forest remembers everything you try to forget. It remembers the roads you didn't take, the apologies you rehearsed but never said, the faces you looked away from. And when it's finished remembering, it builds a place for you to stay. I don't fight it anymore. I can't. Each time I try to leave, I return to the same patch of soil, to the same name, to the same circle. Maybe that's what hell really is. Not fire, not punishment, just the endless rerun of your own hesitation, looping until you finally understand it. The compass still pulses faintly in the dirt beside me, its heartbeat slower now, steady, but calm. And sometimes, when the fog moves just right, I hear her singing somewhere beyond it, a lullaby made of direction and loss. It always ends the same way. Find the way you lost. And every time, I whisper back, I'm still looking. It's morning again. At least, that's what the light says. The forest glows a dim gray that could be dawn or dusk, depending on how you remember it. The air feels newer than it should, damp, fragrant, alive. But I know better now. Morning here isn't morning. It's the forest pretending time still matters. I've walked until my legs forgot what stillness feels like. Every direction leads somewhere I recognize, but only for a moment. A bent pine, a moss-covered boulder, a scrap of road, half swallowed by roots. Every path ends in the same clearing, the same stone, the same name, mine. At first, I tried to fight it. I screamed. I ran. I threw the broken compass into the trees until it vanished. The forest swallowed every sound I made. Then it gave the compass back, laying it neatly at my feet the next time I circled back. That's how I knew it was over. It doesn't matter how far I go. The forest folds back around me, quietly, politely, like a parent redirecting a lost child. Each step I take returns me to the place where I last said nothing. The place where pride kept my mouth closed when it should have opened. The point of no return disguised as patience. The compass doesn't just point now. It breathes. When I pick it up, I can feel its rhythm through the metal, slow and steady, like the pulse of something sleeping under the ground. Once, I held it against my wrist. The beats aligned. For a single second, we shared the same heart. Then it sped up, faster than mine, tugging me forward until the pulse became unbearable. I let it go. It landed in the dirt and rolled toward the stone, stopping at the base of my carved name. The needle spun twice and then stilled, the tip pressing against the first letter E, my initial, the beginning of me. It's strange what becomes important once there's nothing left to lose. I used to think direction was about destination. Now I think it's about confession, about where you look when the past finally catches up. The forest has been patient with me. It's never cruel. It doesn't shout or punish. It simply waits, like a mirror that knows you'll eventually look. When I touch the compass now, it hums low in my palm, vibrating up my arm into my jaw until my teeth ache. Sometimes the hum becomes words, not in English, just emotion turned into tone. But tonight, it speaks clearly for the first time. It's time. The voice isn't hers. It isn't mine either. It's the sound of everything between us. The silence, the waiting, the moment she turned away. I kneel before the stone. The moss is damp and cold beneath my fingers. The inscription of my name looks newer than before, carved deep and dark, the grooves still raw. Beneath it, another line has appeared, as if etched by the passage of my footsteps. He found his way. I don't remember carving it. Maybe I didn't need to. Maybe that's what the forest does when you finally stop fighting. The compass lies in the dirt beside me, trembling faintly. Its glass is cleared. The needle no longer points north or south or anywhere a map could measure. It points inward toward me, and for the first time, it's completely still. I press it against my chest. The metal is warm. The warmth seeps through fabric, through skin, settling deep behind my sternum. The pulse I feel there answers it. Beat for beat, the ground beneath me softens, as if the earth itself is breathing with me. The trees lean closer, their branches whispering together. In their rustle, I hear her voice again, faint and tender. You found me. The sound isn't sad. It's relieved, a welcome more than a warning. The forest exhales, and the fog drifts low, folding around us both like a blanket. I close my eyes. The pulse from the compass grows stronger until it matches my heartbeat exactly. Then the rhythm begins to slow. One beat, then another, until there's only one left. When I open my eyes, the forest has changed. The light is golden, soft, the way it was on the first day of our trip. The air smells of pine and sun-warmed resin. Ahead, the car waits on the shoulder of a narrow road. Clara stands beside it, her hair catching the light, her back turned toward me. "Clara," I whisper. She turns just enough for me to see her smile. Then she opens the passenger door and gets in. The engine hums to life. Headlights flare. She looks out at me from behind the glass, one hand resting on the window. She mouths something, just a word. "Come." I take a step forward. The road seems to lengthen. The light brightens, white and blinding, and then it all folds inward, collapsing in a single breath of wind. The car, the light, her gone. The forest remains. Now I understand. This isn't punishment. It's memory. Looping until it learns itself. The compass doesn't point to where you should go, it points to where you went wrong. And when you've circled that place enough times, when you've worn the shape of it into your soul, you become part of the map that warned you. Maybe that's what the forest is. A collection of all our wrong turns, all our unfinished apologies, a landscape made of regret. If someone else drives this road someday, if their tire catches on some rusted scrap of metal in the dark, if they pick it up and mistake it for a piece of luck, I'll be the one they hear in the distance, calling, guiding, trying, once more, to find my way back. I sit by the stone now, the compass pressed flat against my chest. Its glow is dimmed to a steady ember, neither light nor dark, just waiting. The hum inside me and the hum beneath the ground are the same note, the same direction. And as the fog gathers again, I whisper her name one last time. It doesn't echo. It doesn't fade. It just folds back into the air, becoming another small sound the forest keeps. Above me, the trees sigh. The wind shifts. And somewhere behind it all, a voice that might be hers or mine, or the forest says softly, "Now you know which way the heart points." The compass stills. The light dies. And the circle closes. The butcher's bloom. The first thing I noticed wasn't the look of the cabinet, it was the smell. Not bad, not rot, not age. Something subtler. Something that shouldn't have been there. It reminded me of a biology lab before the lights come on. That faint iron tang beneath the lemon disinfectant. The scent of a place where skin has been opened. The man who sold it to me said it was Victorian. He was half right. The wood was dark mahogany. The hinges blackened with old oil. A set of carved vines ran across its front, winding around each handle until they met at the top in a cluster of small, delicate blooms. Flowers that looked almost like cuts frozen mid-heel. He called it the apothecary's chest. Said it had come from the basement of an old butcher's shop in coastal Maine that had shut down in the 1920 Said it had a smell, yes, but only because of the oils the craftsman had used. Linseed, beeswax, maybe something herbal. I told him I was a medical student. That smell didn't scare me. I was lying, of course. It did, but I wanted the cabinet. Anyway, I carried it home myself. Well, dragged it, really. My apartment was 2 flights up. One of those pre-war New England flats where every stair sounds like a warning. By the time I got it into my living room, it was already dusk. The light through the window caught on the glass panels, and for a moment, I could have sworn I saw something behind them, shifting slightly in the dim glow. But when I opened the doors, there was nothing. Just shelves lined with faint brown stains that might have been varnish. I wiped them clean anyway. The rag came away pink. I told myself it was dust reacting with moisture, that maybe some residue of polish had dried wrong. But later, when I washed the rag, the water turned cloudy, then the smell rose again, stronger this time. Faint, fleshy, and almost floral, like something alive had been hiding in the wood. That night I couldn't sleep. The rain came in steady sheets, tapping the windows in patient rhythm. The kind of rain that makes you think too long. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, replaying the vendor's voice. The apothecary's chest. The phrase had a rhythm to it. Too measured, too rehearsed. Like a line he'd said too many times. Somewhere between thunder and silence, I thought I heard something move. Not loud, just a soft thunk, like wood expanding. Then another. Then a whisper of something dragging faintly along the floorboards. When I opened my eyes, the cabinet door was ajar. I got up, expecting to find that I'd left it loose, but when I touched the handle, the chill bit my skin. Metal that cold shouldn't exist in a heated room. Inside, the air was damp, warmer than the room around it. A faint shimmer of condensation clung to the inner panels, and beneath the usual smell of dust and wood oil, that other scent had bloomed fully. Wet iron, salted skin, and something sweet I couldn't name. I pressed my palm to the back wall of the cabinet. The wood pulsed. I jerked my hand back. No movement now, just stillness. But the heat lingered. I shut the door, locked it, and told myself to stop imagining things. Sleep deprivation, the product of 12-hour anatomy labs, caffeine withdrawals, and too many cadaver rooms. That's all it was. Except, when I lay back down, I caught myself humming something. A tune I didn't know. Slow, measured, rhythmic, like a blade drawn through flesh with care. Over the next few days, the cabinet became part of the apartment's air. Every time I walked by, the scent sharpened slightly. It wasn't strong, never offensive, just always there, like an afterthought at the edge of breath. When my classmates came over to study, no one else noticed. But once, when I opened the window to let the smoke from a burned candle escape, a breeze moved through the room, and I saw dust swirl inside the cabinet. Not float swirl, as though stirred by a breath that wasn't mine. That night, I dreamed for the first time. I was standing in a basement, stone walls sweating, a single bulb swinging overhead. There was a table in front of me, stainless steel, scarred by years of use. On it lay a slab of meat, pale, unfinished, not animal, not kite human. And beside it, an array of knives arranged like an altar display. Their handles were etched with the same blooming pattern as the cabinet's carvings, floral shapes that curved into spirals too precise to be ornamental. At the base of each blade, a small engraving caught the light, a date, followed by a name. When I woke, I still smelled the iron. Morning light has a cruel honesty to it. It makes the unreal look ridiculous. But even in daylight, the cabinet seemed to breathe. Not physically, but every time I passed it, my pulse quickened, and the room tilted slightly, like something about its weight was wrong. I started noticing small changes. Faint scratches appeared along the inner lining, shallow at first, then deeper, as though something had been pressed against it from the inside. Once, while cleaning, I nicked my finger on the corner of the door, a clean, shallow cut, but instead of blood, a clear fluid beaded at the surface, sticky, metallic, with a scent like spoiled roses. I laughed out loud when it happened, just to hear a normal sound in that strange silence. But the laugh came out hollow, empty. That night, the humming returned, only this time, it wasn't mine. It began just after midnight, a low rhythmic sound coming from the living room. Not kite music, not kite voice, like someone murmuring through a mouthful of cloth. I got up, stood in the hallway, listening. The sound was coming from the cabinet. It wasn't humming, it was breathing. A slow inhale, a pause, then an exhale that whistled through the wood grain like air through a throat. I stood there too long, long enough that I started to match its rhythm without meaning to, breathing with it. When I realized what I was doing, I backed away, tripping on the edge of the carpet. The sound stopped instantly, as if startled. Then, just before silence fell completely, I heard something else, a faint clink, like metal tools settling after being moved. I didn't open the cabinet. Not then. I couldn't. By morning, I convinced myself it had been a dream again, but something about the apartment had shifted. The air was still thick, humid, carrying that faint sweetness, the scent of iron and jasmine. When I passed the cabinet, on my way to class, I noticed a small streak on the floor beneath it, a smear so faint it could have been old polish, but when I crouched to wipe it, it left a red line on the cloth. A smell bloomed instantly, warm and sickly. The scent of something just opened, something exposed to air for the first time. And beneath that smell, almost hidden, was another, the sterile chill of formalin, the same chemical used in anatomy labs to preserve tissue. My hands started to tremble, not because I was afraid, but because part of me felt recognized. It was the same tremor I'd felt the first time I held a scalpel in class. That strange combination of awe and power, as if knowledge itself required a blood offering to stay awake. I left the apartment without locking the door. I didn't mean to. I just needed to breathe air that didn't belong to the cabinet. At the cafe down the street, the world felt impossibly normal. Steam, chatter, burnt espresso, the chaos of ordinary life. But even there I could smell it, the faint sweetness of jasmine following me like perfume. The barista asked if I was wearing something new. I said no. She smiled and leaned closer. "It smells expensive," she said. I almost told her the truth, that it wasn't perfume, that it was memory, somebody else's memory, seeping through my skin. But I didn't. I just smiled back and left, the scent trailing me all the way home. When I returned that evening, the apartment was cold. The cabinet door stood open again, as if expecting me. Inside, resting neatly on the shelf, was something that hadn't been there before. A single, rusted key, thin, delicate, smelling faintly of iron and flowers. The pattern carved into its head matched the vines on the cabinet, and for reasons I still can't explain, I felt a kind of peace when I saw it, as though whatever had been waiting had finally decided to introduce itself. I picked up the key. It was warm. When I closed the cabinet again, my hand lingered on the door. The wood didn't pulse this time. It sighed. That night, when sleep finally came, I dreamed of the cellar again. Only this time, the knives were clean, and someone, a figure whose face I could almost recognize, was humming softly, carving something intricate into the handle of a blade. A bloom, petals folding into themselves, and the scent of jasmine rose, thick and sweet, as if the wood itself was learning to breathe. I started keeping the key beside my bed, not on purpose. It just felt wrong to leave it inside the cabinet, as though it might unlock itself. At night I'd reach out and touch it, feel the warmth that never cooled, and the steady metallic heartbeat beneath the rust. For 3 nights nothing happened. Then, on the 4th, I dreamed again. The cellar was brighter this time. The single bulb that had hung on its cord was gone, replaced by rows of fluorescent tubes that flickered in a rhythm I recognized. Not quite a strobe, not quite a heartbeat, but somewhere between. Each pulse of light revealed more detail. A drain in the center of the floor, steel hooks on the ceiling, shelves lined with jars, and the table, the same table from before, clean again, glistening. On it lay a roll of knives. They were beautiful, long, slender, each blade engraved with curling patterns that looked like vines and petals. When the light flickered, the engravings seemed to move, the vines tightening, the flowers closing. Someone was standing behind me. I couldn't see him, but I could smell him. Leather apron, tobacco, sweat, and something sweeter, like lilies left too long in a vase. He spoke, softly, almost kindly. "You have to learn the rhythm, girl. You cut to the beat or you ruin the bloom." Yeah. I woke before I could turn around. The apartment smelled of jasmine again, heavy and wet. The cabinet door stood open. Inside, the shelves looked different, cleaner, polished, almost glossy. For a moment I thought I saw faint scratches forming patterns in the varnish, a spiral maybe, or petals overlapping. I shut it quickly and tried not to look again. But later, when I showered before class, I saw something on my wrist, a faint red mark, thin and curved, like a vine drawn under the skin. It didn't hurt. It just felt warm when water touched it. That night, the dream returned, clearer than before. The man's hands were steady. I could see them now, large and square, the fingers darkened with old calluses. He guided the knife through the meat with a kind of reverence, slicing thin, perfect sheets that folded back like petals under the blade. Each cut released a sound that wasn't quite flesh, not quite silk. A sound like breath, caught between notes. "It's not the cutting that matters," he murmured. "It's what you give to it. You feed the steel a piece of yourself, and it gives you precision." He handed me the knife. The handle was warm, almost alive, and the carved flower along its length pressed into my palm. I knew how to hold it, somehow. My hand moved on its own. The first cut felt wrong, hesitant, too shallow. The second flowed, easily. The third was perfect. He laughed softly. "See? You've got the rhythm already." When I woke, my hands ached, as though I'd been gripping something too tightly. I could still smell that sweetness, thicker now, clinging to my sheets. And when I opened my eyes, I saw the knife, not in the dream, on my bedside table. Small, slender, its blade clean but old, the handle carved with the same spirals that wound across the cabinet doors. I didn't touch it at first. I just sat there, staring at it in the half-light. Then the air moved, a tiny current of breath from nowhere, and the scent of jasmine grew so strong, it made my eyes water. I reached out. The moment my fingers brushed the handle, something clicked inside my head. Not pain, not pleasure, recognition, like the sound of a lock giving way. I knew the weight of that knife. I knew the pressure required to break skin without tearing muscle. I knew how to clean a blade so it left no trace. I'd never done those things in my life, but my body remembered them perfectly. The next few days passed in a kind of hush. I went to lectures, took notes, smiled when spoken to. No one noticed anything wrong, but whenever I closed my eyes, even for a blink, I saw flashes, a reflection of myself in stainless steel, hands moving with a confidence that didn't belong to me. At night, I dreamed again and again, each time closer to the figure. His voice softened. His instructions grew stranger. He spoke of honor, of craft, of feeding the bloom. "Every cut releases a scent," he said. "If you breathe it right, it stays with you. That's how you remember who you are." I tried to wake myself each time, but the air in the dream was thick, the smell of jasmine filling my throat until I couldn't speak. One morning I found that the mark on my wrist had darkened. The thin vine now bloomed into a flower just below the pulse point, a shape almost identical to the carvings on the knives. When I touched it, it throbbed once, faintly, as if echoing a heartbeat beneath the skin. I wrapped a bandage over it before class. I told myself it was nothing. An allergy, an irritation, a trick of nerves. But deep down, I knew what it was. A memory taking root. That evening, I decided to return the cabinet. I packed a sheet over it, gathered my things, and looked for the seller's number. It wasn't on the receipt. I checked the shop's address online. No results. The antique store wasn't listed anywhere, not even in the local business registry. The spot where I remembered the shop standing was empty. Just a boarded-up building with no sign and no name. That night, I didn't dream. I woke instead to a sound, a slow, rhythmic scrape coming from the living room. The same rhythm I'd heard in my dreams. Steel across stone. It crept down the hallway. Heart hammering. The cabinet door stood open again. Inside, under the pale light leaking through the window, the shelves gleamed faintly. On the lowest one sat the knife. Beside it, something new. A folded piece of paper, edges damp, the writing faint and uneven. I unfolded it with shaking fingers, feed it carefully. The bloom must stay alive. The letters looked almost carved rather than written. The ink raised like a scar. I didn't sleep after that. I sat in the kitchen till dawn, watching the first light crawl over the cabinet's carvings, seeing the flowers glisten, as if coated in dew. When the sun finally touched them, the wood seemed to shift, the petals curling open. And for a moment, just one impossible, perfect moment, they released a single drop of clear liquid, the scent of jasmine filling the room like breath. I wiped it away with the tip of my finger. The droplet was warm, sticky, and faintly red. The jasmine wouldn't leave. It lingered in the air like a fever that refused to break. Sweet at first, then sharp, then sickly. No matter how many windows I opened, how long I scrubbed the floors, it was always there, inside the curtains, in the seams of my clothes, in my hair. By the end of the week, I'd stopped fighting it. I told myself it was part of the wood, that scents sometimes seep into old furniture, but I knew better. It wasn't the cabinet that smelled anymore. It was me. The key stayed on my nightstand. Every morning I'd wake to find it turned slightly, never in the same position as before. I tried to ignore it, until the morning I found it on the floor, still warm, still humming. When I picked it up, I noticed something that hadn't been there before. A thin smear of what looked like rust around the teeth. But when I rubbed it between my fingers, it came away red. It wasn't rust. The sound started that night. At first it was faint, barely noticeable, a low vibration beneath the floorboards, like a washer running somewhere below the building. But it came in rhythm, steady, mechanical, deliberate. I timed it once. 3 beats, pause. 2 beats, pause. Again. And again. Like a pattern I was supposed to remember. When I lay flat on the floor, I could feel it in my ribs. The thudding pressed upward, sinking with my heart until I couldn't tell which one was mine. That's when the dreams began to leak into waking life. I'd be standing at the kitchen sink, washing a cup, and suddenly the sound of dripping water would stretch, become the hiss of metal sharpened on stone. The scent of dish soap would sour into that same jasmine iron mix that haunted the cabinet, and my reflection in the window would flicker, not gone, not changed, but delayed, as if whoever was in the glass was remembering the movement a second too late. Every time it happened, the rhythm beneath the floor grew louder, closer. By the third night, I couldn't sleep at all. I sat on the floor beside the cabinet, listening. The sound wasn't beneath me anymore. It was behind the wall, then under it, then inside it. I pressed my ear to the cabinet door. The humming stopped, and in the silence that followed, something scraped softly from within, slow, careful, like metal sliding against stone. Then a tap, light but purposeful, as if knocking. 3 beats, pause. 2 beats, the same rhythm as the sound below. I opened the cabinet. Inside, everything was as I'd left it, shelves empty, except for the knife which lay in the center, glinting dully in the dark. The carvings along the inside panels seemed deeper now, though, their grooves catching the faint light like veins. And at the very back, behind the lowest shelf, I saw a thin seam in the wood, a line that didn't belong. When I ran my fingers along it, dust fell away, and I realized it wasn't a seam at all. It was a door. A small square cut into the wall, its edges outlined by faint scratches, as if someone had tried to open it from the other side. I hesitated. For a moment, I thought of calling someone the landlord, a friend, anyone, but the thought died before it reached my lips. How would I explain it? A cabinet that breathed, a key that bled, a rhythm that spoke? Instead, I took the knife. The handle fit perfectly in my hand. The carvings pressed into my skin like a memory fitting back into place. I slid the tip into the seam and pried. The wood gave way with a soft sigh. Behind it, a hollow space. And in that space, the faint gleam of metal. Not pipes, not wiring. A latch, old and corroded, but still functional. And just above it, barely visible under the dust, a keyhole. The key from my nightstand fit perfectly. The moment I turned it, the rhythmic thudding stopped. For one long, breathless second, the apartment was silent. Then came the sound of air rushing upward. Not fresh air, but stale, heavy, trapped for decades. The hatch opened slowly, its hinges groaning like something waking from sleep. Inside, a ladder descended into darkness. The air that rose from below was cold, dense, and smelled of wet metal and fading jasmine. When I leaned over the opening, a drop of condensation fell from the ceiling onto my cheek. It was warm. I told myself I wouldn't go down. Not yet. I'd wait for daylight. I'd get a flashlight. I'd be rational. But the rhythm came back, faint at first, then stronger. No longer under the floor, but rising from the open hatch. And underneath it, the unmistakable scrape of something metallic dragging across concrete. And then a pause. Then, the same soft tapping as before. 3 beats. Pause. 2 beats. I counted without meaning to. My pulse matched it. By the time I realized I was moving, I was already standing at the edge of the opening, the key still in my hand, the knife in the other. The darkness below wasn't empty. It was textured, alive with the slow pulsing shimmer of moisture on stone. I couldn't see the bottom, but the air that rose from it smelled familiar, sweet and raw and strangely inviting. I placed one foot on the first rung. The metal was cold enough to bite. The rhythm grew louder, vibrating through the ladder, through me. For a moment, I thought I heard someone speaking below. A low murmur, a man's voice, words blurred by distance and time. "Feed the steel," it said. "Let it bloom again." I stopped halfway down. The air grew warmer the lower I went, the scent thicker, almost suffocating. The walls felt close, slick with condensation that tasted faintly of salt when it touched my lips. The key in my hand pulsed once, like a second heartbeat, and then I heard it, the sound I'd been mistaking for machinery. It wasn't mechanical at all. It was a knife being sharpened, slowly, patiently. The rhythm was deliberate, loving, reverent. My own breathing fell into sync with it before I could stop myself. When I reached the bottom, the ladder ended in a small room. Stone walls, concrete floor, a single steel table in the center. I didn't need light to know where I was. It was the room from my dreams. The drain, the hooks, the roll of knives, all waiting. The scent was overwhelming now. Not rot, not death. Something cleaner, something that almost felt sacred. I walked forward in the dark until my hip brushed the table. Cold, wet, real. The knife roll lay open, just as I'd seen it before. Only one space was empty, the space where the knife from my apartment should have been. I placed it back gently, and for the first time since I'd bought the cabinet, the humming in the key stopped. In the silence that followed, I heard something new, a breath behind me. Low, steady, not menacing, just there. I didn't turn. I didn't need to. I knew who it was, or what it was. The air around me shifted, carrying that same faint sweetness, and the voice that had haunted my dreams whispered, "Good girl." The words brushed my ear like heat. Then the sound of the sharpening resumed, but this time, They came from my own hands. I don't remember climbing back up. I only remember the feel of the knife against my palm as I closed the hatch behind me, the wood ceiling with a sigh that sounded almost like relief. The apartment was silent again. No humming, no rhythm. Oh, Yasmina. Only the faint, lingering echo of metal against stone. Somewhere below, still moving in time with my heart. When I woke, the key was gone. The hatch was shut, its outline barely visible beneath the rug. Everything looked ordinary again. Morning light through the blinds, coffee cooling on the counter. Silence, but the silence had weight now, as if the air itself were listening. And somewhere inside it, beneath the hum of the refrigerator and the soft ticking of the clock, I could still hear the echo of that last sound. Steel sliding against stone. I told myself I'd imagined it. I even said it out loud. You're fine. It's over. The sound of my own voice startled me. It didn't sound like mine. Too low, too steady, too calm. By afternoon, the scent had returned. Stronger, purer. Not jasmine anymore, but something closer to white flowers after rain, sweet, wet, faintly metallic. I couldn't focus. I skipped class, sat on the floor, stared at the cabinet. Sunlight crawled slowly across the carvings, filling each groove until the vines looked alive. As the light shifted, I thought I saw the flowers open tiny movements in the wood grain, like breathing. And then, very softly, I heard it, a heartbeat. Not Mina, not behind me, inside the cabinet. When I opened the doors, the knife roll was there again. It shouldn't have been. I'd left it below, but there it lay, spread neatly across the shelf, the blades gleaming as though they'd just been polished. Their handles looked darker, richer wood soaked through with something wet. I didn't move at first. Every nerve in me wanted to run, to burn the thing, to flee. But another part, the quiet, curious part that loved anatomy, that loved knowing how things worked, wanted to see. I knelt and reached out. The moment my fingertips touched the handle of the smallest knife, the room tilted. Heat rushed up my arm. For a second, the world folded inward, sound collapsing into a single pulse. Then I wasn't in the apartment anymore. It felt like falling into a memory that wasn't mine. The light was dim and yellow, trembling through a single bulb. My hands, his hands were thick, calloused, streaked with old cuts. A leather apron hung heavy on my chest, stiff with dried blood. On the table before me lay a carcass. Not human, not animal, but something between a suggestion of form without identity. He was humming again, that same tune I'd caught myself whispering in the dark. Each note matched the motion of the knife. Slice, pull, turn, wipe. The blade moved as if guided by thought alone, gliding through flesh that parted willingly. Each incision opened like a petal, unfolding to reveal another layer, another shade of red. And the smell, thick, iron-sweet, intoxicating, filled the lungs like wine. It's not cruelty, he murmured. It's care. You open what resists. You free what's hidden. The words vibrated through my skull. They weren't his anymore. They were ours. I blinked and saw flashes, quick, luminous. Hands arranging flowers on a table, blades gleaming in a basin of water. Someone laughing, low and warm. Then the image twisted. The flowers became meat. The laughter became breath caught in a throat. When I looked down again, the table was covered in blooms, dozens of pale petals slick with red. The smell of jasmine rose thick and choking. I tried to step back. My body didn't move. His hands held the knife steady, pressing the edge against the inside of my wrist, not his. One more cut, he whispered. The final petal. I felt the blade break skin, not deep, just enough to open. The warmth that followed wasn't pain. It was release, as if something trapped had finally found air. When I came back to myself, I was on the kitchen floor. The knife lay beside me, spotless. My wrist stung. A thin line of red, curling like a vine beneath the skin. The mark from before the faint flower beneath the pulse had deepened. Now it looked carved, each petal raised like scar tissue. The air around me pulsed with heat, a heartbeat echoing against the walls. For a moment, I thought it was the building pipes maybe, or water in the radiator. Then I realized it was coming from me. The rhythm inside my chest didn't match what I felt under my fingers. One was mine, the other was slower, heavier, and sometimes, when they aligned, I could hear a voice whisper behind the beat. "We're almost done." I tried to throw the knives away. I wrapped them in a towel, tied the bundle tight, carried it down to the dumpster behind the building. But as I lifted the lid, a sound rose from the bundle, a metallic sigh, soft but pleading. I froze. Something inside me, not thought, not emotion, but instinct tightened like a muscle. I pressed my palm to the towel, warm, beating. I couldn't throw them away. They were breathing. I brought them back inside. That night, the dreams came without sleep. The cellar stretched wide around me, walls glistening like living tissue. The butcher stood across the table, his face half in shadow. He didn't look monstrous. He looked tired, eyes gray, mouth soft, skin pale as wax. He held out a knife, the same one I'd touched. The air shimmered around it, edges of light bending, forming the outline of a bloom. "Finish it," he said. "You were always meant to." I took the knife. Our hands met. And in that contact brief, perfect, the last barrier between us dissolved. Every breath I'd ever taken filled with his. Every thought braided into his memory. The world shrank to the rhythm of a blade, the scent of jasmine, the sound of flesh becoming flour. I don't remember the rest clearly, only fragments, like photographs soaked in light. A table, a shadow moving behind me, a voice humming my name, and the sudden realization that my lips were humming back. When I opened my eyes, it was dawn. The cabinet stood open. Inside, the knife roll was gone. The floor beneath it was damp. A small trail of water or blood led toward the hatch beneath the rug. I followed it, bare feet silent on the wood. The rug shifted easily, revealing the outline of the trapdoor. It was already unlocked, waiting. I should have been afraid. I wasn't. I felt calm, purposeful, as though every choice I'd made had led precisely here. The air below was warm. The scent was overwhelming now, jasmine and iron, flowers and blood, indistinguishable. I descended. Each rung pulsed faintly under my hands, as if the metal carried a heartbeat of its own. The cellar glowed softly. Candles where there had been none burned in a circle around the table, their flames bent inward, drawn by some invisible breath. The knives lay arranged, in perfect order, clean, shining, waiting. I stepped forward. My reflection moved in the steel, not delayed. Not wrong this time, just other. He was there, inside it, smiling faintly. "There you are," he whispered. "I kept your hands ready." I reached out, fingertips grazing the handle of the largest knife. The instant I touched it, the cellar shuddered. The light bent, and every surface around me, walls, table, floor, seemed to inhale. Then it happened. The transfer wasn't dramatic. It wasn't fire or lightning. It was breath. Simple, shared breath. Mine in, his out, until the difference between us disappeared. When the candles went out, the room stayed lit. The glow came from the knives themselves, their floral engravings blooming with faint veins of light, pulsing in rhythm with the heart that now beat in both of us. I closed my eyes. His memories, no. Our memories, unfolded. Decades of cutting, cleaning, perfecting. The sacred art of transforming what decays into something that endures. It wasn't cruelty. It was creation. The beauty of separation. The intimacy of the knife. For the first time, I understood the scent. It wasn't blood at all. It was the perfume of devotion. Jasmine for the living, iron for the truth beneath. When I came back to myself, I was standing at the table. My hands were clean. The knives were still, and the air felt lighter, emptied of something old. I walked upstairs, closed the hatch behind me, and locked it. The key didn't hum anymore. The cabinet smelled faintly of flowers and soap. And for the first time in weeks, I smiled. Not because I was free, but because I finally knew what it meant to belong to a craft, to a rhythm, to a memory that had chosen me. The morning came soft, almost merciful. Gray light seeped through the curtains, dust turning slow circles in it. For the first time in weeks, the air didn't smell of damp wood or rust. It smelled clean, fresh, like soap and jasmine and something faintly sweet baking on low heat. I stood at the sink, sleeves rolled to my elbows, hands submerged in warm water. Steam rose in ribbons that blurred the edges of everything. The counter, the window, the world beyond. The rhythm of rinsing, wringing, drying felt natural, familiar. Every motion measured, every movement remembered. On the counter beside me, the knives waited, polished, aligned, their edges fine enough to whisper. The carvings along their handles had darkened to the color of old rosewood. When the light struck them just right, the flowers inlaid there seemed to open and close with each heartbeat. Mine, or his, or ours. I called Michael just after 7. My voice sounded bright, easy, normal. I told him I'd overslept, that the stress of exams had finally broken, that I was feeling better, really better. He hesitated, said he'd come over after class. I told him I'd make breakfast. When I hung up, the apartment exhaled. The faint hum behind the walls faded, replaced by something softer, the sound of breath through petals. The cabinet door was open again. It didn't startle me anymore. Inside, the shelves were bare, except for a single bloom, white, thick-petaled, resting in the center. I touched it. It was warm. The scent that rose from it made my head swim, not floral now, but human, skin-sweet and salted. I placed it in a glass of water by the window. It turned slightly toward the light, as though remembering how to live. While the coffee brewed, I laid the knives out on a linen towel. There were 7 in total, each one a different shape, a different purpose. I'd learned their names in dreams. Boning, paring, filleting, cleaver, trimmer, bread, carver, tools of devotion. When I ran my fingertip along the edge of the smallest one, it hummed faintly, as if purring, not hungry. Content. The mark on my wrist, the carved flower, had paled overnight. Only a faint outline remained, glowing slightly beneath the skin. When I pressed my thumb against it, I felt warmth, then movement, as though something inside was shifting, unfurling. I wasn't afraid. The fear had burned away days ago, somewhere between the first cut and the last dream. I moved through the apartment, straightening things that didn't need straightening. Every surface gleamed. Even the air seemed polished. When I opened the refrigerator, the smell that came out wasn't food, and it was clean steel, sharp, almost antiseptic, comforting. The hatch beneath the rug stayed closed, but sometimes I thought I could hear faint dripping from below, steady and slow like an IV line feeding something that didn't need feeding anymore. I whispered to the air, "Thank you." The sound disappeared before it reached the walls, but I knew it had been heard. Michael knocked around 9, 3 sharp raps. His usual rhythm. I opened the door before he could knock again. He smiled. The way people smile when they're trying to gauge your temperature. Worried, but relieved. "You look good," he said. "Better. Sleep helps," I told him. "Coffee's ready." He walked past me into the kitchen, stopped, frowned slightly. "What's that smell?" "Jasmine," I said. "It's a new candle." He nodded, though his eyes lingered on the knives arranged on the counter. "They look new," I smiled. They'd been in the family a long time. We talked. Small things. Class, schedules, plans for summer. The kind of talk that fills silence without touching it. He laughed once, the sound bright and clumsy against the hush of the room. When he reached out to brush my wrist, his thumb paused over the mark. "What's this?" I pulled my hand back gently. "Old scar," I said. Then, to distract him, "Sit down. You'll like what I made." He obeyed, still watching me. I could feel his gaze tracing the small details, the neatness, the calm, the unfamiliar perfume that made him blink slowly, like someone drugged on scent. I turned my back to him and began slicing. Vegetables first, then herbs. The knife moved easily, gliding through the resistance of skin and fiber. Each stroke made a faint whisper, a soft exhale that timed itself with my breathing. The rhythm soothed me. The air thickened. Somewhere beyond hearing, I could sense the cellar pulsing again, the old heart beating in time with my own. Behind me, Michael spoke. Something simple. I didn't catch it. The knife paused mid-cut, then finished the stroke on its own, perfectly straight. When I turned around, the room had gone still. Light pooled gold across the counter, glinting off the knife's polished surface. For a second, I saw movement in it, a man's reflection, standing behind me, hands on my shoulders. But when I blinked, only Michael was there, smiling faintly, eyes soft, as if everything around us had slowed to match the hush. "You're different," he said quietly. "I like it." I smiled back, and the scent of jasmine deepened until it was almost unbearable. After breakfast, he wandered to the living room while I washed up. The cabinet door had drifted wider again, its hinges sighing softly in the draft. He bent to look inside. "Where'd you get this thing?" he asked. "Smells nice. Like flowers." I turned the tap off. The silence filled the room like liquid. When I looked at him, he was tracing the carved vines with his fingertips, following the lines down to where the flowers curled open. The cabinet seemed to breathe with him. "It was a gift," I said. "Passed down." He didn't hear me. He was humming now a tune I recognized, slow and rhythmic, the same lullaby that had haunted my dreams. The next part is hazy. The world tilted again, colors dimming to sepia, sound narrowing to a single pulse. He turned toward me, still humming, the smile half formed on his face. My hand moved before thought. The knife fit perfectly in my grip. Not anger, not impulse, just completion. When steel met flesh, the sound was not what I expected. No scream, no crack, just a sigh, a sound like a petal, torn free from its stem. The scent bloomed instantly. Jasmine, thick, dizzying. Time became soft after that. Moments blurred together. The water running, the hum returning. The floor beneath me warm and breathing again. The cellar below singing softly, its rhythm returning to perfect sync. When I finally looked down, the knife was spotless. The carving along its handle glowed faintly, the petals now filled with color, as though painted from within. I laid it gently on the counter, arranged the others beside it. Together they looked like a bouquet, a stale bloom. By afternoon, the scent had changed again. No longer jasmine, something gentler, like freshly cut flowers in a cool room. Outside, neighbors passed by, unaware, smiling at the sweetness that drifted from my open window. The police wouldn't come for days. They'd find nothing unusual. No struggle, no blood, just the faintest perfume that no one could identify. They'd ask about Michael, and I'd tell them he'd gone home. They'd believe me. Why wouldn't they? The apartment was immaculate, and the cabinet was closed. I sleep well now. The dreams are soft, measured, precise. The cellar is bright, the knives humming in perfect harmony. Sometimes I wake to find new flowers on the table, white, fragrant, still warm to the touch, each one shaped slightly differently, each one bearing faint veins like fingerprints. I put them in water, arranging them carefully. The room always smells divine after. People say every craft demands a piece of its maker, that every skill, learned deeply enough, reshapes the soul that holds it. I understand that now. The butcher wasn't evil. He was patient. He waited for someone who could keep the rhythm, who could let the bloom continue. Now that someone is me, and the scent, that beautiful, terrible sweetness, it never leaves. It lives in my skin, in my breath, in the air itself. If you were here, you'd say it smells like flowers. But you'd be wrong. It smells like remembering. The sloth collector. There's a kind of peace in being slow. People don't admit that anymore. Everything in the city runs too fast, trains, voices, the sound of ambition rattling through every vent and window. You can hear it even when the air conditioner's shut off. That hum of people trying to outpace time. I used to think that hum was normal. Then I learned what silence really sounded like. My name's Marcus, and I collect sloths. Not real ones, obviously. I couldn't keep something alive if I tried, but the likeness is the objects. Little reminders of how to take things easy. There's a plush sloth on my couch. The first one I ever bought. Its fur worn thin from being squeezed whenever rent notices arrived. There's a ceramic one perched on my bookshelf. Hand-painted in Peru, slow smile frozen mid-hang. There's a watercolor print above my bed, 3 sloths hanging in a triangle. Eyes half closed, their bodies like commas in an unfinished sentence. My favorite used to be a snow globe. Inside it, a tiny sloth clung to a branch under a storm of glitter. When you shook it, it looked like he was yawning through a blizzard of time. It calmed me. Everything about them did. I guess I liked the idea of something that never hurried, that didn't care if the world moved without it. I'd tell myself it was mindfulness, philosophy, rebellion against burnout culture, but maybe it was something else. Something already waiting for me. I live in a basement apartment off Flatbush Avenue, the kind with low ceilings, cheap bulbs, a single window facing an alleyway. Most days I'd wake up late, brew coffee, scroll through listings of collectibles online. Sometimes I'd sell old ones to make space for new. I liked the exchange, letting go, then replacing. It made me feel circulating, I guess. But lately I'd noticed a pattern. Every new piece I bought seemed older than the one before. Not vintage, just tired. Like it had been waiting too long for me to arrive. The last one came on a rainy Sunday in September. I was at a flea market in Gowanus, one of those half-legal setups under a leaking roof. The air smelled of metal and mildew, a mix that could make you nostalgic for things you never owned. Vendors muttered to each other in low tones. The slow scrape of boxes being dragged across concrete echoed through the aisles. At the back corner I saw it, a small glass case filled with jewelry, tarnished rings, pocket watches, pendants shaped like forgotten animals. And there, in the middle, was a ring, silver, thick-banded, engraved with a sloth curled into itself, asleep. Its tiny face was carved so delicately I could almost see the rise and fall of breath. The vendor, an old man with fogged glasses, watched me pick it up. "It's been waiting for you," he said. His accent was soft, maybe Caribbean, maybe just time-worn. I laughed awkwardly. "I collect sloths." He nodded once, as though that explained everything. "You'll like this one then. It slows things down." I didn't catch the tone, whether it was a joke or a warning. When I asked how much, he smiled. "Not much. It just wants a home." The ring fit perfectly, snug on my right hand, not tight, not loose, cold at first, then almost instantly warm. I looked at it under the flickering light, watching how the carved eyes caught reflections. Something about it made my chest loosen. The city noise outside seemed softer, the raindrops heavier, slower. Even my breath steadied. When I looked up again, the vendor was gone. His table stood empty, dust settling where he'd been. I thought maybe he'd gone for coffee. I never saw him again. At home, the apartment looked the same, but the light through the window moved differently. The clock on my microwave blinked 3:33, then 3:34, then stopped. I didn't notice at first. I was busy admiring the ring, turning my hand back and forth, the way silver bends light into liquid. Something about it felt centering, like wearing gravity itself. I told myself it was good for me, a reminder to breathe, to resist the city's grind. That night, I slept deeper than I had in years. No dreams, no noise, just the feeling of falling, endlessly, without impact. The next morning, everything felt slower, The coffee machine hissed like it was speaking underwater. The refrigerator hum dropped in pitch, vibrating through the floor like a heartbeat. When I tried to pour milk, the stream came out thicker than usual, viscous, lazy, reluctant to land. I checked my phone. The clock read 9:12, then 9:12 again. Then, finally, 9:13. It wasn't broken. It was just late. At work, a graphic design gig I half cared about, people moved too fast. Their voices clipped, sharp, irritating. Emails piled in my inbox faster than I could delete them. When I tried to type, my fingers lagged, like moving through honey. I told myself I needed more coffee, more sleep, but caffeine didn't help. Sleep didn't either. It wasn't that I was tired. It was that the world seemed over-caffeinated, running laps around me. Every sound carried an afterimage. Every motion trailed a ghost. By noon, I was behind on everything. By 3, I gave up pretending to keep up. When I left the office, the street outside was blinding headlights, bleeding into each other, people moving in jerks and skips. Their laughter came in pieces, as if the air couldn't keep up with their mouths. I remember thinking, I'm the only one still moving at the right speed. That thought felt peaceful. Over the next week, I stopped setting alarms. I let the ring tell me when to wake, and it did gently, always late, always soft. I stopped answering messages on time, stopped returning calls. I'd see a text flash on my screen from my roommate, from work, from my mother, and by the time I reached to reply, minutes had stretched into hours. When I finally typed, the words came sluggish, thick as syrup. But the strangest part was the calm, the absence of guilt, the silence between thoughts. Like the ring was smoothing every edge, slowing every emotion until even regret felt distant. My roommate Dylan started to notice. He'd wave a hand in front of me mid-conversation. Hey man, are you zoning out again? I'd smile slowly, nod, pretend to wake up. Sometimes I'd answer questions from 5 minutes earlier without realizing it. He laughed it off at first, said the ring was my anti-anxiety charm, joked that he wanted one too. But once, when he grabbed my wrist to look at it, I saw his face change. He blinked, frowning. You feel that? He asked. I didn't. But he let go quickly, shaking his hand. It's like pins and needles, he said. Cold. That night I caught him staring at me over the couch, like he was trying to remember something important and had forgotten what it was. I started losing track of days. Sunlight and streetlight blurred into one continuous dimness. Sometimes I'd fall asleep standing, leaning against the window, watching raindrops crawl down the glass like tiny, deliberate creatures. Once, I counted them. I think I stopped somewhere around 57,000. It didn't feel long. It just felt right. The ring's silver darkened over time, tarnish creeping along the band. The carved sloth's eyes dulled from bright to matte, then to something like onyx. Sometimes I thought I saw them blink, but it was always at the edge of vision. A trick of reflection, a shift in shadow. I told myself I'd take it off, just for a while. I tried one night. The metal felt fused to my skin, not tight but set, like it had grown there. When I pulled, my hand trembled. My pulse slowed. A faint voice, not sound exactly, but thought whispered, "Why hurry?" I froze. The world seemed to stop with me. The hum of the refrigerator died. The traffic outside fell silent, mid-honk. Even my heartbeat stretched into single, heavy thuds. When the lights flickered back on, the clock read 3:33 again. The next morning, Dylan was gone. His shoes by the door, his wallet on the counter. No notch, just absence. I found a text from him hours later. Time-stamped, 6:02 a.m. Car trouble on Atlantic. Might need help. Call me when you're up. And the message was old by the time I read it. Or maybe I was. I went to call him back, but my hand felt so heavy. The phone slid from my fingers, landing softly on the floor. When I finally picked it up again, the screen had gone dark. Outside, the city moved in slow motion, the world continuing its pulse, and me, too slow to catch even the next breath. The city didn't stop when I did. That's the cruel part of it. You slow down, and the rest keeps sprinting, trampling through the minutes you can't hold on to. I told myself it was exhaustion. Too much screen time, too little sunlight. But every time I lifted my hand to my face, the ring caught the light and the thought dissolved, replaced by a kind of humming approval, a wordless comfort that whispered, "Stay right here." The first week after I bought it, I tried to keep up. I set alarms on every device I owned. I taped a note above my bed that said "move" in red marker. But the mornings kept arriving, later and later. I'd wake to the sound of my alarm already fading. Its beeps stretched thin, like echoes sliding away through syrup. Sometimes I could swear I'd been awake all night, watching shadows crawl along the ceiling, listening to the building breathe, the hum of pipes, the moan of heat through radiators, a rhythm slower than any clock. I'd count between each sound, 1, 2, 3, and realize the seconds were growing longer. At the office, people started finishing my sentences for me, not because I stammered, but because I couldn't reach the end fast enough. Words sank halfway through my throat and stayed there, like fish too tired to swim upstream. My supervisor called me into her glass cubicle. "You've been off lately," she said, hands folded, eyes darting to my right hand. "Is that new?" I nodded, showing her the ring. "Flea market find," I said. "Kind of a good luck charm." And she smiled politely but didn't touch it. Something in her expression shifted, a flicker of unease, the look people give when they smell a candle that shouldn't be burning. "Well," she said after a pause, "try not to let good luck slow you down." She laughed at her own joke. I didn't. That evening, the train home stalled between stations. The lights flickered, then steadied into a dim amber glow. Commuters groaned, checked phones, sighed. I just sat there, content in that pocket of stillness. I felt the city finally match me. The track silent, the air heavy, the moment perfect. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel late. When the train jerked forward again, something shifted on my finger. The ring had grown warmer, almost pulsing. Tiny currents ran through it, like a small heartbeat sinking to mine. I looked down and saw that the sloth's eyelids, those microscopic ridges of silver, were open. Only a sliver, but enough to catch a glint of light, a reflection, a watching. He blinked. The next time I looked, they were closed again. By the third week, I stopped fighting it. There was a peace and surrender, the way a tired swimmer stops flailing and lets the tide carry them. I ate slowly, chewed until taste dissolved. I walked slower too, moving at the rhythm of old clocks. Even my thoughts learned patience. Looming one petal at a time, people at the bodega started avoiding eye contact. The cashier once asked if I was feeling okay. "You're quiet," he said. "Like scary quiet." I smiled, or I think I did. It took too long to know for sure. One night, I fell asleep on the couch and woke to find the television still on. A late-night nature program, slow-motion footage of sloths climbing a tree in perpetual drizzle. Their movements were hypnotic, almost divine, each limb deliberate, unashamed of delay. I watched for hours without realizing it. When the screen finally went black, my reflection stared back. The room behind me seemed frozen steam from the kettle suspended mid-curl, dust unmoving. Only the faint shine of silver at my hand stirred. The ring's carving had changed. The sloth wasn't sleeping anymore. Its mouth had curved into something that wasn't quite a smile, and the body that had once hugged its branch now hung from it, head down, arms extended as if reaching toward the pulse beneath my skin. I whispered, "When did you change?" The sound of my voice lingered in the air for too long, echoing like someone else had repeated it inside the room a moment later. Sleep stopped meaning what it used to. I'd drift off for minutes or hours. I couldn't tell and wake in the exact same position. Sometimes, the morning light would fall differently across the wall, and I'd wonder how many days had passed between blinks. My phone buzzed constantly. Missed calls, messages from Dylan, from work, from numbers I didn't recognize. They all blurred together. Apologie, question, deadlines. The word urgent appeared often, but by the time I read it, it never felt urgent anymore. I started hearing a sound at night. Not kite not kite breathing. It came from my wrist whenever I lifted my hand too fast. A wet creak, like something stretching inside metal. Once, I pressed the ring to my ear. There was noise inside it, faint but steady. A rhythm, and beneath it, a voice whispering so softly that it felt more like memory than sound. Slow down. There's so much time to lose. The following morning, Dylan stormed into my room. "Man, what is wrong with you?" he said, waving his phone. "You didn't answer any of my texts. You missed rent day again. He froze mid-sentence, staring, his eyes locked on the ring. Jesus, it's like it's breathing. I looked down. The silver surface shimmered, rippling slightly as though filled with air. I started to laugh slow, halting, a sound that didn't belong to any emotion I knew. "It's fine," I said, the words crawling out of me. "It's calm." He backed away. "Take it off, Marcus. Seriously, I can't." "You mean you won't?" I opened my mouth to argue, but he was already gone, the door slamming faster than my reaction could form. I spent that day in the living room, staring at my hand. The skin around the ring had turned pale, almost translucent, as though time itself had stopped feeding that patch of flesh. When I pressed the edge of a fork against it, there was no pain, just a slow wave of warmth spreading outward. The ring pulsed once, then twice, then again, matching my heart, and then my heart began to match it. Later, I found a note taped to the fridge in Dylan's hurried handwriting. "Went out for a bit. Call if you need me. Don't wait too long." The letters blurred as I read them. The ink seemed to melt on the paper, dragged downward by gravity or guilt. I stood there until the refrigerator motor clicked off. The silence that followed was enormous. Alive, in that silence, I understood what the vendor had meant. The ring didn't slow things down. It slowed me down, so it could feed on what I lost: seconds, minutes, pieces of life too small to measure. I thought about taking a hammer to it, but I couldn't even lift my arm fast enough to try. That night, the sloth's eyes opened completely. Tiny black stones glimmered from the silver sockets, catching the dim lamplight like twin mirrors. When I raised my hand, they followed. When I looked away, I felt them still watching. The longer I stared, the heavier my body became. Every cell leaned toward sleep. A sound like dripping molasses filled the room, slow intervals between each drop. Each pause stretched until the next one never came. I don't remember lying down. I only remember waking. The window light was gray, the air thick, and the clock read 3:33 again. Always 3:33. The number of unfinished things. The ring had grown darker overnight, the silver deepening to the color of storm clouds. When I lifted my hand to the light, I saw movement beneath the surface, a faint shadow turning, curling, sleeping. I realized then that it wasn't a carving at all. It was a window, and whatever was inside was resting. For now, at some point I think it stopped being a ring. It became a boundary, a thin, silver horizon around my finger that divided the living from whatever waited on the other side. The world beyond it moved like water. The world within it was still. I didn't quit my job. I just stopped showing up. By the time I thought of explaining, days had folded into each other like damp pages. Messages blinked unread on my phone. Rent notices slipped under my door. The paper curled from the humidity, soft as skin. Outside, the streetlights flickered too slow to notice. A siren wavered in the distance, dragging itself out, the pitch bending downward until it sounded like someone sighing through a pipe. I sat on the couch and let the city pass me by, watching headlights slide across my walls like the ghosts of time running laps, each one slower than the last. The air in the apartment changed, heavier, more viscous. If I moved too quickly, I could see it ripple, as though my hands were parting invisible syrup. The ring liked it that way. I could feel its approval in the small pauses between breaths, a quiet pulse of warmth that matched every heartbeat I had left. Sometimes I caught myself whispering to it words that weren't mine, apologies, promises, fragments, things like, "I'll wait," or "Not yet," and always, from somewhere deep inside the metal, came the faintest echo, "Good." I tried to mark the passage of time once, lit a candle, sat beside it, watched. The flame bent, flickered, and then seemed to freeze. Wax pooled, but never dripped. The smoke from the wick rose halfway, then hung there, gray and perfect. When I blinked, the candle was gone, burned down, completely. I checked my phone. The battery was dead. The clock still said 3:33. The human body isn't built for this kind of stillness. You start to feel the joints complain, the blood slow down. You begin to hear your own heart like a metronome too far apart. Every few hours, if you can call them hours, the ring would tighten slightly, as though it were reminding me, "Stay calm, don't rush." And I'd listen, because rushing hurt now. Every attempt to move too fast sent a chill through me, a cold bloom that spread up my arm and settled behind my eyes. It felt like punishment. Once, I tried running water over the ring, thinking maybe I could slip it off, but the tap only dripped, each drop stretching midair before landing, the splash slow enough to count every microsecond of impact. Time around me was thickening, turning solid. Sometimes I heard Dylan in the hallway, or maybe it was memory. His footsteps used to be quick, impatient, the sound of someone always running late. Now they dragged, drawn out. The echo of each step reached me, minutes after the sound began. I'd sit by the door and wait, but he never knocked. Maybe he had moved out. Maybe he'd never existed at all. It was hard to tell what had been real before the slowing began. I started seeing small movements in the corner of my eyes, not people, more like smudges, air deforming, as if someone were wading through it very far away. When I turned my head to look, they froze, perfect, still frames of something mid-stride. The ring pulsed whenever I noticed them, as if proud of what it had made visible. Maybe they were like me, others caught in the drift, souls who had hesitated too long and been collected for their patience. The dreams became more vivid. If you can dream when you barely sleep, always the same place, a room of liquid light, thick and amber, the air trembling like heat above asphalt, and floating through it dozens of silver shapes, each one the size of a heart, each one slowly turning, curling into itself, sleeping. When I tried to touch them, they opened their eyes, the same tiny eyes carved on my ring. They looked at me not with malice, but recognition. I understood then what the vendor had meant when he said it collects. Every sloth was a life slowed to stillness, a person harvested into patience, each one perfectly preserved, forever suspended in the moment, before regret could turn to action. I woke from one of those dreams to find my apartment darker than usual. The electricity had gone, or maybe it had just decided not to move anymore. I could see my breath. Every exhale hung in the air too long, a soft silver cloud that shimmered like metal dust. The ring pulsed again, harder this time. The skin beneath it was bruised and gray. When I pressed my thumb there, I felt no blood, just a slow vibration, like something alive, whispering in circles beneath the surface. And then I heard it, a voice, low, patient, coming from the ring itself. Every delay has a cost. The words arrived inside my skull, not through my ears. They were cold, dry, each syllable stretching seconds apart. You wanted peace. Now you will have all of it. I tried to stand, but my legs refused. They felt filled with sand. I leaned forward, hand pressed to the floor, and the wood rippled like water. Each movement I made sent waves through the air, ripples bending furniture, warping walls. I could feel the world slowing with me, the city outside crawling down to match my pace. It wasn't that I'd stopped. It was that everything else was being collected too. pulled toward this center of slowness. The ring grew warm enough to hurt. I grabbed at it with my other hand, fingers slipping. The metal hissed. Something beneath my skin pulsed in reply, as though veins were being rerouted around it. "No," the voice said again. "You're nearly perfect." I lost track of when the first real silence began. It wasn't the quiet of night or absence of noise. It was a kind of pause in existence itself. No pipes groaning, no clocks ticking, no breath from outside. Just the slow pulse of the ring and the faint hum of my own body trying to remember how to live. In that silence, I realized how beautiful it was. The end of urgency. No missed deadlines. No guilt. No motion to chase. Only the steady weight of waiting. I think I smiled. The muscles of my face moved so slowly that it must have taken minutes. When I looked at my reflection in the window, the world behind me wasn't moving at all. A taxi froze mid-turn. Raindrops hovered like glass beads in the air. My reflection, though, it moved. Not by much. Just enough to remind me that I was still separate from the thing I'd become. Its lips twitched into a smile half a second before mine, and in its eyes, I saw the faint glint of silver spirals turning, small and endless. I don't remember falling asleep. I don't even know if it counts as sleep anymore. But when I woke, or thought I did, I was standing in that amber room again. The silver hearts floated closer this time. One of them brushed my hand. It felt warm, familiar, like touching the inside of a pulse. They began to hum together, a sound too slow to be a song, too steady to be silence. The ring's warmth spread through my whole body. I could feel each heartbeat slow, then stretch, then pause, not stopping, just waiting. And in that waiting, something opened. The last thing I remember clearly is a sensation of falling backward, as if gravity had decided to reverse itself, as if I were being folded into the fabric of stillness. The ring whispered one final thing before the light went out. Every collector becomes the collection. When my eyes opened again, I was home. Everything exactly as I'd left it, except the clock on the wall. It wasn't blinking 3:33 anymore. It wasn't blinking at all. The hands were gone. Only the face remained, smooth and silver, reflecting the faint shape of a sloth curled into sleep. And beneath it, on the table, lay another ring, identical to mine, waiting for someone slower than I ever was. The phone woke me. Or maybe it didn't. It's hard to tell when waking and sleeping move at the same speed. A vibration, a flash of blue light under the dust on the coffee table. The name on the screen, Dylan. The time, 6:02 a.m. The same time as the last message I'd never answered. For a long moment I just stared. The sound it made wasn't a ring anymore. It was a low, drawn-out hum, a single note sliding endlessly downward. The phone pulsed in my palm like something alive. When I finally swiped to answer, my thumb barely moved. The screen dimmed before I could lift it to my ear, then went black. A second later, maybe an hour, another vibration. This one weaker, as if it had traveled through syrup. I pressed my ear against the dead glass. A voice leaked through the static. Not Kite Dylan's. Slower, stretched thin. "Marcus, you there? Call me back. Please." The words bent, melted together, each syllable catching on the next like film, slipping through an old projector. I sat there with the phone against my ear until the battery died. When the hum stopped, the silence felt too complete, like the room itself had been holding its breath. The ring tightened again, a small pulse against my skin. Not pain exactly, but instruction. I looked at the screen, at the faint ghost of the missed call symbol still burned into it, and thought, I can still make it. I can still go. It took me an hour to stand, another hour to find my shoes, another to remember how the door worked. By the time I reached the hallway, the air felt thick enough to push back. Outside, Brooklyn was stuck between moments. Rain hung motionless in the air, each drop a bead of glass suspended in invisible threads. A car halfway through a turn floated above the asphalt. The driver's eyes were open but unblinking. Even the pigeons had frozen mid-wing, feathers caught like pages in a book someone forgot to close. I moved among them slowly, my steps echoing too long, each sound overlapping with the one before it. The ring on my hand glowed faintly, casting a small circle of movement around me. Inside it, the raindrops quivered and fell again. 1, 2, then froze. The instant they hit the ground, I realized that the world wasn't slow. I was the only thing left moving. A single second, crawling through eternity. Dylan's building was 3 blocks away. It might as well have been continents. Every step I took felt like dragging my legs through wet clay. I could hear my heartbeat counting distance. 1, pause. 2, halfway there I passed a billboard for a watch company. The model's arm had been caught mid-gesture, and a perfect smile paused on her lips. The watch face on her wrist reflected the same shape as mine, the same sloth curled around time, the same eyes half open. I laughed. Or maybe cried. The sound stretched out so long that it came back to me as something else entirely. By the time I reached his street, the sun was already falling behind the buildings, though it had been morning when I left. Colors bled slowly across the sky, purple into gold, gold into black, a bruise that refused to heal. The paramedics were still there, or maybe they always had been. Red and blue lights hung motionless in the fog, long ribbons of color that didn't flash, just shimmered faintly, like oil on water. I moved closer. The smell of burnt rubber and blood thickened the air. I saw Dylan's car against the lamppost, its front end crumpled inward. A paramedic stood frozen mid-motion, hand outstretched toward the door. Through the cracked window, I could see Dylan's face, peaceful, eyes closed, as if waiting for me to hurry up. I pressed a hand to the glass. Cold, too still. When I tried to speak, my voice came out like a whisper underwater. Dylan. The name rippled through the air, breaking the stillness just enough for his eyes to twitch open. Only for a moment, just long enough to see me, long enough for something like recognition to pass between us. And then nothing. The ring pulsed once more, and the air folded around the car, like a curtain closing. I think I screamed, but no sound came out, only a vibration deep in my throat, a wordless plea that never escaped. When I looked down, my phone had turned on by itself. The screen showed a new message, timestamped minutes before the crash. Marcus, please answer. I don't know why everything's slowing down. Something's wrong with the air. I can't move fast enough. It's like the text stopped mid-sentence. Below it, another line had appeared. One that I hadn't tipped. He's almost ready. I dropped the phone. It hit the pavement in slow motion, bouncing once before, settling among the unmoving raindrops. The reflection on its cracked screen wasn't mine. It was the vendor from the flea market. His glasses glowed white. He mouthed something I couldn't hear. And then, the image shifted, the sloth carving, its tiny mouth curling wider. The ring burned, the metal pressed against bone, melting skin into silver. I tried to pull it free, but my fingers wouldn't obey. It had fused, rooted itself like a parasite that had finally reached the heart. Each pulse drew something out of me. Color, warmth, sound. Even my thoughts began to stretch, the edges fraying like old film. And through it all came the whisper, the same slow voice from before. Every moment you wasted, every hesitation, I kept them safe for you. Now they're mine to spend. The world tilted. My knees hit the ground. I felt the pulse of the city beneath me, the deep, tectonic rhythm of subways and footsteps and lives moving too quickly to notice each other. But now, all of it was slowing. Streetlights dimmed. Engines sighed to a stop. The air thickened until it hummed with exhaustion. And then, for the first time since the ring had chosen me, I heard the sloth speak clearly. Not in words, exactly, but in a meaning that sank straight into my bones. You'll rest now. You've done enough. Sleep until the world learns patience. The lights of the ambulance began to fade, each flash stretching farther apart. Somewhere behind me, I thought I saw another figure, watching, tall, still, face hidden by fog. He wore the same kind of ring. He didn't move. The air between us shimmered, For an instant, I felt something being passed from him to me, a burden or a blessing. I couldn't tell which. The ring cooled. The pain stopped. Time stopped trying. When I looked back into the car, Dylan's face had changed. The peace was gone. In its place was a slow, heavy smile, too slow to be human. A faint silver glimmer circled his wrist. Another ring. I stumbled backward, the world folding over itself in ripples. Every building leaned inward. Every streetlight bent low, as though bowing to the weight of what I'd done. In the distance, the billboard with the frozen model changed again. Her arm no longer displayed a watch. It displayed a ring. Her smile had lengthened into the same patient expression the sloth wore. I don't remember walking home, only the feeling of endless corridors, each turn leading back to the same door, the same heavy air pressing from all sides. Inside, the apartment waited, exactly as I'd left it. The coffee in the cup still warm. The clock forever. 3:33. The phone buzzed once more, though it had no battery left. A single notification appeared across the black screen. New message from Marcus. I didn't open it. I already knew what it said. Don't wait too long. I woke to a sound I didn't recognize. At first I thought it was rain again, but it wasn't. It was the soft tick of something breathing. Not lungs. Not wind a clock that had remembered how to move. My hand rested on the arm of the couch. The ring was darker than ever. Almost black, its surface alive with slow pulses of light. Each time it flared, I felt a heartbeat that wasn't mine. The air in the apartment had thickened to honey. When I turned my head, the motion pushed waves across the room. They rolled against the walls, carrying faint reflections of things that shouldn't exist. Figures paused mid-gesture, mouths open, caught between syllables. I realized then that they were people I knew. The cashier, my supervisor, Dylan, all trapped in tiny moments of hesitation. Every pause they'd ever taken gathered here. The ring hummed. I felt its pride. This was the collection. There's no clock anymore, only the glow. The number 333 has dissolved into one long shimmer that never finishes turning over. I think that's what forever looks like when it gives up trying to count. The television turns itself on sometimes. Not shows, just static that bends into patterns. Silver lines forming the outline of a sleeping animal. The longer I watch, the more I see the world breathing through its nose. Slow, content, endless. I used to want to scream at it, to shake myself awake. But the urge passes before it forms. The slowness protects me from panic. It erases the part of thought that needs things to end. Yesterday, if that word means anything, I tried to leave. The door opened easily, but beyond it was only gray. A hallway that stretched and coiled like smoke. I took one step and felt time fold backward, depositing me again in the center of the room. Every direction is home now. Every road leads back to this stillness. Maybe that's mercy. Sometimes I hear Dylan. He moves somewhere behind the walls, his footsteps a slow drag, like something heavy being rolled through shallow water. When I call his name, the sound takes minutes to reach my ears. He answers eventually, a drawn-out yeah that vibrates the pipes. He forgave me, or maybe the ring did. It's hard to know where I stop and it begins. The sloth on my finger has opened its eyes completely. Tiny stones gleam in the sockets. When the light catches them, I see reflections of places I've never been. Rainforests, rivers, cities moving in perfect slow motion. They aren't visions. They're memories being digested. The ring feeds on what's left of me, turning moments into still images, filing them away somewhere deep inside. I think that's what it always wanted. Not life, not death, but everything in between. The pause before choice. The breath before word. That's where eternity hides. At night, or whatever counts as night now, the apartment fills with a faint, metallic glow. Shapes drift through its sloths, thousands of them, their silver bodies coiling slowly through the air like constellations underwater. Each one carries a faint outline of a person inside. Faces frozen mid-blink, mid-thought, mid-forgiveness. They look peaceful, They're peaceful. I'm one of them. Maybe not yet visible, but I feel the slow pull of joining. Every time I breathe out, I move a little closer to their rhythm. Every breath I take in, I take less of the world with it. The phone still glows sometimes. No number, no sound, just a faint text appearing on the cracked screen. Wait, nothing else. No punctuation, no urgency, just the instruction. I obey. The body changes under stillness. Blood thickens. The heart learns patience. Even hunger forgets how to wake. I touch the spot where the ring meets bone. It's seamless now. The metal and flesh braided like vines. When I press harder, I feel a pulse that doesn't belong to me. It's older, wiser, satisfied. The voice that lives in it murmurs sometimes, the same tone as the vendors, the same patience that first drew me in. You were always ours, Marcus. You mistook stillness for rest. But rest is the slowest motion there is. There's a mirror in the bathroom I don't look at anymore. The last time I did, my reflection was half a second behind. Its eyes were darker, its smile calmer. When I turned away, it stayed facing forward. I think it's waiting for me to stop pretending I'm not already there. Outside, I imagine the city still runs. People rush to trains, curse at red lights, scroll past entire lifetimes on screens. They don't notice the small hesitations, the lost seconds between thoughts, the ones I collect for them now. Each sigh, each blink, each maybe later feeds the slowness a little more. One day they'll all catch up to me. They'll find how gentle it feels, how easy it is to stay. The ring has started to hum louder. The tone carries through the walls, through the floorboards, into the street. I can hear other notes answering, far away, from people who have begun to slow without knowing why. A whole choir of patience, singing the end of haste. Soon the glow will fill everything. I can already feel the edges of my shape dissolving, each limb growing lighter, each thought stretching thinner until it becomes sound. When the last of me goes, the ring will fall away, ready for another hand. Or maybe it won't need to. Maybe it will wear the next person itself. I don't resent it. It kept its promise. It made the world quiet. It gave me all the time I thought I wanted. And now, as the final pulse slows to nothing, I see the truth. The sloth was never sleeping. It was waiting for me to match its breath. If you ever find a silver ring in a box of old things, I don't try it on just to see if it fits. It will. It always does. And when the world around you begins to move too fast, when you start wishing everything would just pause and remember me. Remember how easy it is to mistake peace for hunger. I'm still here, somewhere between seconds, watching the last motion fade. And if you listen closely, in the space between two ticks of a clock, you'll hear it too. A soft voice whispering, slow down, stay a while. The eternal crossroads. There are roads that forget you as soon as you leave them, the way water forgets the shape of a hand. And then there are the other kind, the ones that keep your footprint like a bruise. You can drive for years, change your car, your name, your habits, and still, some bend of asphalt will recognize your engine before you turn the key. Grotto Crossroads is one of those places. I didn't go there first as a historian. I went as a sister. But it's easier to catalog a haunting than to confess to one. So I learned the dates, the variants, the maps. I built a wall of footnotes between me and the one night every thought of mine secretly repeats. The folktale was simple. The way a blade looks simple when it glints. A forked road beneath a live oak, a granite headstone swallowed by roots, a stone so old the letters fall off the face in flakes as thin as moth wings. The story said, anyone who betrays a loved one at this crossing is punished not by death, but by time, not by a devil, but by their own memory, pressed into the dirt like a seal. You will come back. You will choose again. You will fail again. Every town in the county has a ghost corner, a place where headlights seem to lift off the ground and float, a ditch that fills with fog even in August heat. But Grotto had the headstone, and the headstone had a name once. You can still feel the groove of it with your fingers where the moss has receded. E-N-A. Then the stone breaks. Then the curl of another letter. Like a throat clearing before a final word. By daylight, the place is unremarkable. 2 narrow lanes part ways under the oak, one to the quarry, one toward the old feed mill. The crown of the tree makes a shadow like a held breath. Birds chatter and then stop. If you stand still long enough, your own pulse takes on the rhythm of the place. A little slow, a little late, as if your heart is trying to agree with the road's memory of you. I parked on the shoulder with my hazard lights rapping their tiny metronome, left, right, left to blink, ticked against the quiet. Paper maps in the passenger seat. Voice recorder in my lap. Because I'm professional even when the profession is a disguise. The afternoon had been gray enough to hold on to the light past dinner, that soft pear-colored hour where everything looks like a faded photograph. I told myself I'd be quick. Walk the perimeter. Note the coordinates. Photograph the stone. How long could it take to verify a story I already knew too well to tell? Wind ran through the oak, with a sound like someone thinking too hard. You only get one moment, I said into the recorder. Folklore calls it a pause, a hold. The caution is, do not look behind you when you sense it. If you do, you'll see what you lost, in exactly the posture you lost it. If you don't, if you keep looking forward, the memory breaks up like rain. I said it gently. For the tape. For me. The shoulder was uneven. The car gave a soft complaint as I stepped away. Gravel fidgeted under my boots. The air had the wet metal taste the county wears before a storm, last summer's iron lifted out of the soil by first thunder. I cut the engine. The hazard lights stopped. All at once I could hear the place breathing again. A far-off truck, a tick in the leaves, the dull murmur that happens when the land remembers wheels. The stone took a minute to find because every mossy shape wants to be significant when you're looking for significance. Then my fingers slid into the cold carve of it, the face slanted toward the ditch, the roots clutching it like a hand that refuses to let you fall. No fresh offerings, no tokens, only the pale slugs of mushrooms pushing out of the loam. I brushed away damp leaves and felt the gouge of letters I'd never be able to admit I already knew. Baseline's intact, I said for the recorder. No vandalism, no obvious ritual debris. I raised my phone for photos and saw my hand shake. I told myself it was the cold October spin of wind making a metronome out of the smallest parts of you. Okay, I said. Okay. You don't have to say a thing twice, except to yourself. From the left-hand road came a smear of light, the kind that hovers before a vehicle appears. Not a lamp, not a porch, a moving brightness. In some more harmless life, I might have thought it was a kid with a flashlight doing dares. In this life, in my life, the sight picked up something in my chest and set it down somewhere too far away to retrieve. No engine, that was the worst of it. Just the white of the light, pooling beneath the oak, washing over the stone in a way that made the carved letters seem to lift, shimmer, reassemble. I turned the recorder off. Folklore says sound attracts these things like sugar water draws gnats. Or maybe I wanted to make sure no one could ever play back the moment and freeze it, and freeze me inside it again. Sarah. The wind said. No, not wind. My name is ordinary everywhere but there. At Grotto it becomes a sin. It breaks into 2 beats and lands like a verdict. Sarah. It said again. Her voice this time ragged with roadside dust, familiar, even through the distortion of time. My sister has always spoken, as if expecting to be interrupted. It makes the end of her words lean forward, ready to run. 2 years ago, no. 2 lifetimes, no. Last night, forever. We came this way, after the kind of family argument that makes the car feel too small for the people inside it. We had the heat on too high because my hands were shaking. She told me to take the mill road, that it would shave 10 minutes. I argued for the quarry road because I said I knew it better. She laughed meaner than she meant, and said I always defaulted to the map I made for myself, never the map anyone handed me. And when the truck appeared where no truck should have been, when the horn spiked the air and the world inhaled, I took my hands off the wheel. That's the part you don't confess. It was the smallest gesture. half a second of fear, a prayer without content. The car drifted. The oak had a shadow I didn't expect. The brakes stuttered like a bit mouth. There are days I tell myself my foot went down in time. There are nights I admit I moved my foot too late so I could narrate the accident like an historian describes a flood. And there was a road. And there was a tree. And there was a momentum. Sarah, she said, from the wrong decade, from the wrong ditch. The light strengthened. It came not from a bulb, but from a belief. It made a shape out of itself as it neared the crown of the oak, like a truck unsheathing itself from white. High beams don't bloom like that in real life. In the story they do. They give you enough illumination to see your failure more precisely. I took one step back. Your body knows where it learned its lesson. I could have turned away. Folks swear that's the loophole. The crossroads would swallow it if you refuse to greet it. Walk out of the air and into another year. But if you've ever loved anyone and left them at a boundary, you know what the body does. Whatever the mouth promises, the eyes look. You tell yourself you're checking the time. You're measuring the threat. You're verifying. But really, you're indicting yourself anew with the proof. The figure in the road was small, then less small, then undeniable. The way my mind keeps trying to make her 12 again, even though she was 20 when the metal folded wrong. She stands barefoot in that memory, even though the police report lists shoes. She shivers even when I dream the night in July. The brain insists on its favorite version of suffering the way a child insists on the same bedtime story. Familiarity is a mercy and a knife. Help, she said. And that's what finally turned me toward her. Not my name. Any ghost can forge a name. But help, that is a real sentence. It has grammar. It has a subject and an object and a demand. I couldn't see the truck now for the light. I could see her. One hand up, the other pressed flat to her ribs, as if she were holding in breath or blood. The sound of an engine came very softly, as if wrapped in cotton, as if the road had stored it and was playing back only what wouldn't wake the dead. All at once I understood this too. The crossroads had omitted the worst piece the first time. You never hear the second horn in the original version. You are too busy with your ankle in the seatbelt, with the map book emptying itself onto the floor like a flock of dead birds. But here, the place has time to refine the cruelty. It lets you hear the chance you had and refused. I thought, I will move my feet. I thought, I will be the kind of person who runs forward. The light grew, and with it, the appetite of the air. Sarah. She said something else that I couldn't hear through the bloom of white, a sound covered by a larger sound, like a child's voice inside a waterfall. I took a step. The ground did not take it. The ground slid it backward. The world reversed, like a tape. The step became a flinch, the flinch a stagger, the stagger a pathetic run in the wrong direction. Gnats rose from the ditch in a praise shape, then fell. The oak kept its counsel. The light made a square of itself across the front of my car as if it were waiting to stamp something official. I heard my mouth make a noise I did not authorize. The little animal sound mothers describe when the baby goes quiet in the crib for too long. I tried to put my voice into the word wait, but the sound fell apart before it crossed my teeth. This is the part of the story where an outside rescuer would arrive in a different kind of tale. A man in a coat, a woman with a flare, a stranger with an exact sentence that disarms the magic. But there are places where strangers do not come. The road curves wrong. The sky leans. The sound you make cannot find a second throat. And then you are either the person who goes forward or the person who does not. This was never about demons. This is about the small hinge of a second when your love is weighed and found wanting. I turned. I ran. My palms hit the hood, as if it were my idea to stop. Keys like teeth in the ignition. My breath broke itself into coins and skittered across the floor under the pedals. The engine woke as though waking were a moral act. I didn't look into the light. I told myself I would look next time. I told myself there would be a next time. The tires chewed gravel. The oak shrugged. The white washed itself out of the mirrors and then narrowed to a slit and then to a pinprick and then to nothing. The road behind me went dark, but did not go away. The road ahead of me was ordinary, a good word for a life you can forgive yourself inside. I drove until the radio could drown the pulse in my mouth. I stopped at a gas station that sells canned soup in summer and asked for a bathroom key that hung from a carved block of cedar. In the mirror, my face was the same face I wear at lectures when someone's phone rings during the Civil War dead. My hands, my hair refusing to decide what color this week. A small scratch at the corner of my jaw where some invisible branch must have made a claim. "Get it together," I told the person in the glass. She did. I turned off the recorder in my pocket, though it had been off the whole time. When I stepped back into the fluorescent, I understood what the legend had meant by loop. The place does not ask you to decide once. It does not accept your first answer. It wants the muscle memory. It wants you to train yourself to betrayal, to make it easy, to make it automatic, to make it love. The cashier asked if I wanted a receipt. I said no. She asked if I wanted a bag. I said no. She asked if I wanted a minute, and I did not know which question she meant. I said no to all the future she offered me. On the drive home, the map app rerouted twice construction on the mill road, an accident by the quarry. My car insisted on the path that made the fewest decisions. The oak is a magnet. Even when you turn away, your blood leans. Back in the apartment, I made a pot of tea and did not drink it. The steam climbed, became a finger, pointed to the corner of the kitchen, where the light runs thin, where night takes extra breaths. I wanted to believe the day had been an investigation. I wanted to file the notes and shelve the narrative the way old librarians do, carefully, spines politely facing out. But the night has the memory of an animal. It brought the road into the room, smuggled under the door, sprung from my shoes, pressed in the black seams of my coat. I heard a distant horn. I heard a woman call my name like she had every right to the syllables. "You get," the folklore promised, "one moment to refuse a haunting, a single full breath on which to pin your new life. It is either a rumor to make cowards feel comforted, or a truth I have never managed." I set the recorder on the table and pressed play. Road noise, my own voice describing the stone, the soft hush of leaf against jacket. Then faint and impossible, a second voice in the background. "Raw?" I turned it off. I folded my hands into each other to keep them from finding keys again, from learning the way through the dark without the rest of me. Outside, a truck downshifted at some other intersection. The sound cupped itself and offered me the shape of the next decision. I said, into a room that did not guarantee it could keep a secret, "I will go back. I will do it differently." The room understood, like all rooms do, that a vow made at midnight is the first draft of a lie. Somewhere under the oak, the stone shifted in the earth just enough to make a letter out of nothing. Somewhere, the same white light rehearsed itself, unspooling along bark and ditch and bone. And at the edge of sleep, as the engine of the world dimmed, I heard the road lay out its only rule in a voice that almost sounded like mercy. "You are not here to choose. You are here to remember the way you chose." And when the morning thinned everything to reason and breakfast, I knew where I would point my car and how the road would be waiting with its gentle, unnegotiable loop. They say every haunting begins with a sound, not an image, not a shape in the dark. A sound small, repeatable, innocent enough that your mind mistakes it for something ordinary. Mine began with a horn, not the blaring kind that splits the air open. This one came in a sigh, as if someone was apologizing through the mouth of a machine, a tone I'd known before I could admit I'd heard it. It came from the left, then the right, then from beneath my own ribs. I was at my desk, listening to my recording from the day at Grotto. Each time the playback reached the point where the first whisper of my name began, a faint double tone bled through my speaker's two notes, a second apart, one high, one low, like two worlds calling to each other and failing to connect. When I stopped the file, the sound kept going, from outside this time. I told myself it was traffic. Brooklyn still has trucks at 3 a.m., but the tone was wrong for the city. Too rural, too hollow, a breath made of distance. It swelled and receded, swelled and receded, until I realized it wasn't coming closer or farther. It was looping. I opened my window. The street below looked normal enough. A trash can, a cat, the aftertaste of rain on the asphalt. But the air had that peculiar flatness, the silence that always hides behind repetition. The horn came again, and this time, between the two notes, I heard the faintest thing, a voice trying to speak, but cut short. Sa. Then the second tone, then nothing. I closed the window and locked it. The latch clicked with the same rhythm as the horn. Even the small movements in my apartment, the hum of the refrigerator, the slow creak of old pipes fell into that same two-beat cadence. High, low, pausa. The world had adopted the pattern of my guilt. The next morning, I found tire marks in front of my building. 2 perfect arcs, parallel, slightly smudged, leading nowhere. The asphalt wasn't wet enough for that kind of print. Someone had been here, or the past had finally remembered the address. I tried to go about the day like a rational historian. I answered emails, made tea, wrote the first paragraph of the Grotto Crossroads article. In rural folklore, the act of hesitation is its own kind of sin. The words didn't look like mine. They shimmered slightly on the screen, as though written over by invisible fingers, repeating the sentence a moment later. I pressed save. The file name changed itself. The pause, between horns, DocX. My son said I was driving again. I told myself I needed more data. Truth is, I just needed to see whether the oak still remembered me. The road was narrower than before, or maybe my hands were unsteady. Each curve seemed sharper, the trees crowding closer. The radio bled in and out talk shows from wrong decades, static that resolved into breath. The sky behind the windshield dimmed to copper, the kind of twilight that looks permanent until you blink. I passed the sign. Grotto Road. No outlet. The letters glowed faintly even though the car lights were off. Somewhere behind the horizon, a horn sounded. High. Low. I slowed the car. Not because I wanted to, but because my body recognized the rhythm. The engine thudded once, then idled, as if waiting for permission. And there it was again, that pause between tones, that silence fat with memory. In that small gap, I heard everything I'd ever refused to finish. My sister's laugh from the passenger seat, her inhale when the brakes first screamed, the single word that never got to be sorry. The horn didn't echo. It folded. It bent time in half and slid the edges together until I could feel both versions of the night pressing against my spine. The oak appeared sooner than it should have. The distance between town and tree had shortened, as if the world had edited out everything irrelevant. Branches hung lower than memory. The stone shone faintly in the headlights. I cut the ignition. The air thickened. The horn came again. Only this time, the pause between notes didn't close. It stretched, and in the stretch, I heard footsteps behind me. They were too light to be mine, too familiar to belong to anyone else. Sarah. Oh, my name again, but slower now, each letter heavy with the ache of practice. She'd been saying it every night for 2 years of my life and 2 centuries of hers. I tried. I whispered. The sound barely made it out of my mouth before the air folded around it. You didn't. The reply wasn't cruel. It was exhausted, like someone admitting a weather pattern. The lights of the phantom truck began to rise again at the bend, white swelling into gold into something too bright to name. The hum of an engine built itself from nothing. I stepped toward the center line. The air trembled with heat that wasn't heat, the vibration of time rehearsing the same second. She was there, again, a few yards ahead, hands up, eyes wide, no blood, no motion, just that infinite plea suspended in the gap between horns. I took a breath, and for once, the road didn't shove me backward. My foot touched the edge of the asphalt, and the horn sounded its first note. High. The second note waited. Low. The pause yawned open, wide enough to step through, and I did. Everything inverted. Light collapsed inward like lungs exhaling. The trees bent, their shadows stretching the wrong way. Sound vanished except for the single thin tone of my heartbeat. In front of me, she stood still, a reflection of myself from years ago. Her hands trembled, the same scar, on her left wrist, where the seatbelt caught. Her mouth opened to speak. "Run," she said, and I understood too late. And she wasn't asking for help, she was giving it. Because this wasn't the moment before the accident. It was after. It had always been after. I wasn't here to change the choice. I was here to learn the geometry of regret, how it folds space, so that you're always walking toward the same failure from different directions. The second horn finally sounded. It was louder than before, and softer too, the way thunder sounds in dreams. Impossible and close. The world dissolved around its echo. When I opened my eyes, I was standing beside my car on an empty road. The oak swayed gently, the wind making its leaves clap in slow applause. The air smelled of metal and rain. My recorder sat on the hood, light blinking red. I pressed stop. A small voice mine whispered through the playback. "You didn't." Then a pause. Then my sister's voice, perfectly clear. "But you will." The headlights of a truck appeared again in the distance. Same brightness, same hum, same inevitable curve. And I realized that maybe the crossroads didn't want repentance. Maybe it wanted routine. A ritual of hesitation repeated until hesitation itself became holy. The first horn sounded. High, then silence, then low. And in the wide gap between them, I heard the road whisper its only prayer. Choose again. I woke, without moving. The kind of waking that doesn't belong to a morning, only to a pause between versions of night. The air was the wrong temperature, thick and pale, the texture of fog mixed with breath. My body was upright, though I couldn't remember standing. My hands were on a steering wheel. My eyes were open to light. Headlights. Always headlights. They stretched out from a curve that refused to resolve. The beam hung in midair, suspended like the moment before a crash, the way a scream hangs in the mouth before sound chooses a direction. My throat was dry. My tongue felt coated in road dust. I blinked once, twice. The car's dashboard glowed faintly, its clock fixed at 12:03 a.m., the same time the accident report had listed years ago. Except I hadn't been in a car for hours, unless I never left. Unless the road had been holding me the entire time, rethreading the same night until I stopped noticing the splice. "Sarah," a voice said. It came from the passenger seat, not startled, tired. The voice of someone who's been waiting too long for an apology. "Don't," I whispered. The figure turned toward me. I didn't need the light to see her outline. Same shoulder slope, same hair matted with sweat. My sister looked older, but not older the way years make you old. Older the way repetition wears a groove in wood. She was still holding her seatbelt across her lap as if it mattered, as if safety still meant anything here. "You keep leaving," she said. "I come back. You come around. It's not the same." Her words didn't echo. Sound here didn't travel, it folded. Every syllable pressed directly into my skull like a pulse. I wanted to look at her, but the headlights forced my gaze forward. The road ahead shimmered, stretching and shrinking like a heartbeat seen through water. "You can't fix it," she said. "That's not what this place wants." Then what does it want? To remember itself. The horn sounded again, high, low, a metronome between heartbeats. This time the pause didn't stay empty. Something moved inside it. A blur stepped out from the tree line, its shape flickering through colors that didn't exist in headlights. It looked like me and didn't. The same clothes, the same hair, except the eyes were full of light, not reflection but emission. The way an animal's eyes catch fire when caught in night vision. The figure placed a hand on the hood of the car. "I've done this before," I said. "No," my sister answered. "They have." The figure began to walk around the car in slow circles, each step leaving a faint trail of light on the asphalt, like phosphor marking a pattern. When it reached my window, it leaned close enough for me to see its lips move. I couldn't hear the words, but I didn't need to. I knew what they were because I'd said them once in panic, long ago. "Please don't make me choose." The figure smiled a sad, perfect mirror and stepped backward into the glare. When the next horn sounded, it vanished, swallowed by the light. I was outside the car now, though I hadn't opened a door. The road's surface was soft beneath my feet, as if tar had turned to velvet. The oak loomed behind me, its roots tangled around the stone like knuckles clenched in prayer. I walked toward the intersection. The air shimmered with heat, though it was cold enough to see my breath. Each exhale hung for too long, then drifted sideways, joining a dozen other pale shapes wandering near the ditch, ghosts of breath, maybe, or memories that never finished leaving. The wind carried faint whispers, phrases repeated from old arguments, fragments of laughter, warnings. None of them distinct, yet every one of them mine. At the center of the crossroads, a line of light drew itself between the lanes, curving into a spiral before flattening again. The road was sketching something beneath my feet. An orbit, maybe, or a snare. "Do you hear it?" My sister's voice asked from everywhere at once. "Hear what?" "The world remembering the sound of your brakes." The horn blared again. I flinched. The light shifted color from white to amber to a dull, bloody red, and then the world split. The forest duplicated itself on both sides of me, mirror perfect, except in one the tree branches were bare, and in the other they were full of leaves. I stood between seasons, between outcomes. On my right, I saw the accident metal bending, glass exploding into tiny suns, the kind of beauty only tragedy makes. My sister's body caught mid-turn, her eyes locked on mine through the blur of motion. The car froze in the instant before impact, a painting of physics suspended in mercy. On my left, I saw the version where I'd reached her. My hand clutching hers, pulling, the headlights swerving away. We were both alive in that world, but so still it hurt to look. Two statues carved from relief. And I understood the rule of the crossroads at last. You don't get punishment or redemption. You get both. At once. Forever. You live every version of the moment until you can't tell which one is real, and then you keep living them anyway. The ground began to hum beneath me. The spiral of light on the asphalt expanded, brushing my shoes, circling, tightening, drawing me into the center. My skin prickled. The air tasted like ozone and regret. From the dark behind the oak, the faint outline of my car appeared again, headlights cutting through smoke that wasn't smoke. The driver's door opened. Someone stepped out. Me. Again. But this version of me was calm, her face clean, her expression resigned. She walked to the middle of the road, the same way I had that first night, and placed her hand gently on my shoulder. "This is how it ends," she said. "Not with death, with decision fatigue. What happens if I go with you?" She smiled. "Then you'll never have to choose again. And if I don't, then you'll come back. You always come back." Behind her, the light of the phantom truck swelled once more, blinding, endless. The horn began its first tone. High. I felt her hand tighten on my shoulder. The second tone waited. Low. But in the pause this time, a third sound whispered through a heartbeat. Mine and not mine, echoing in the soil. I turned toward the ditch. My sister stood there barefoot, hands clasped. She wasn't pleading anymore. She was nodding, gently, as if giving permission. For the first time, the light didn't frighten me. It simply filled everything, washing color from the world until only shape remained. When it faded, the road was empty again. No car, no oak, no headstone, just flat ground stretching into darkness. I looked down at my feet. The asphalt beneath me pulsed once bright, then dim. The spiral mark was gone, replaced by a single word etched into the tar as though burned there. Return. And when I looked up, the same crossroads waited ahead of me again, identical in every detail. The horn sounded high, low. But now, between the notes, another voice joined, quiet, steady, like someone guiding me toward understanding rather than punishment. "It isn't about saving me, Sarah. It's about forgiving the one who ran." The sound faded. The night went still, and somewhere beyond the bend, the engine of time began to turn over once more, ready to start the loop again. There is a point on every road where the sky stops meaning distance, where clouds lower themselves just enough that they look like the continuation of the asphalt, the gray swallowing the gray, until you can't tell if you're driving through air or through memory. That's where I woke up. No steering wheel this time, just the stretch of pavement laid out before me, gleaming faintly like wet glass. I walked, or thought I did. Each step felt delayed, as if I was watching someone else take it half a second before I followed. The oak was behind me now, or maybe ahead. Here the world folded too easily for such directions to matter. The road curved upon itself, both sides identical, each bend reflecting the other like two halves of a coin. And there I was, a woman in the same coat, same shoes, same hair coming loose around her face, walking toward me from the opposite direction. We slowed at the same moment, and the symmetry held two hands lifting, two mouths opening in a single breath. "Are you?" "Yes," she said before I finished. Her voice had the weight of all the versions I'd already been. Soft, unhurried, certain. "Which one are you?" I asked. "The one who stayed," she said. "The one who didn't run." "And you?" "I'm the one who keeps trying to understand why she did." We stood in the middle of the mirrored road, while the air hummed around us. Above, the clouds began to shimmer, faint outlines of other figures moving within them, hundreds of Sarahs walking in slow unison, each caught at a slightly different angle of regret. The road beneath us quivered, and in its surface I saw the reflection of headlights, dozens of pairs, weaving in a dance that never touched the ground. My reflection stepped closer. "Do you remember the sound?" she asked. "The horn?" "No." "The silence that came after. The place between. That's where you live now. The pause between choices." She reached up and pressed her palm against mine. The contact didn't feel solid. It was like touching the skin of a bubble thin, trembling, ready to break. Our fingerprints matched, then bled together. The world tilted slightly. For a heartbeat, I saw through her eyes, saw myself from the outside. The exhausted tilt of my head, the tiny tremor in my jaw that never stopped since the night of the accident, the way my eyes never fully focused, always scanning the edges for a version of the road I could survive in. When I blinked, she was gone. Only the echo of her steps remained, moving in perfect rhythm with mine, as if the road had memorized the pattern and decided to keep it. The horizon changed color, pale gold now, like early morning, but the light had no source. It simply was. Every few steps, a new reflection appeared beside me. A dozen iterations, each replaying a moment I recognized but couldn't claim. Me at 16 reading the newspaper about a local accident I swore I didn't cause. Me at 20, driving alone through fog, humming to stay awake. Me at 26, standing at the foot of the oak, whispering a name. Each image flickered into being, played its small confession, then dissolved into air. A museum of unfinished lives curated by guilt. The road underfoot pulsed softly, like a heartbeat coming from beneath the asphalt. With each pulse, a faint voice escaped the ground, whispers layered on, whispers, the language of repetition. After an hour or a moment I saw the sign again. Grotto Road, no outlet. The letters shimmered as if wet. Behind the sign stood another me, leaning against the post, smiling with tired compassion. "You can't keep walking in one direction forever," she said. "Why not?" "Because the road bends. Always. Even straight lines curve if you follow them long enough." She stepped aside. Behind her, a mirror had appeared tall, silvered, framed in the same weathered wood as the oak's bark. In it, I didn't see her or me, only the space between headlights, white heat, frozen motion, the collision that refused to happen but never stopped wanting to. "Look," she said, "not at what you did, at what you kept." I looked, and for the first time, the reflection didn't show the crash. It showed two girls sitting in a car before the turn, laughing, arguing over the radio, alive. The memory shimmered like a fragile soap bubble but didn't break. "Hold that," she whispered. "It's the only part the road can't use." Then she faded, and the mirror went dark. I kept walking. The asphalt softened under my feet, turning to soil. The hum of the highway fell away, replaced by the murmur of cicadas and the occasional sigh of wind. Somewhere ahead, headlights glowed again, but this time they weren't blinding. They flickered like candlelight. The truck, or what had once been the truck waited at the edge of the clearing, its shape ghosted with time. Its engine whispered instead of roared, purring like something that finally understood rest. The driver's door was open. On the seat lay a small mirror, old, cracked, framed in dull brass. I picked it up. The glass was warm. When I tilted it toward me, I saw not my own face, but hers, my sister's, eyes clear, expression serene. "You came back," she said. "I never left." She nodded, faintly. "That's what I mean." The air behind me thickened. The sound of many footsteps approached all my reflections, returning, merging, aligning. Their presence felt like wind pressing through trees. Each one whispered a different version of the same sentence. "It's not forgiveness you need. It's permission. It's not punishment. It's continuity." The chorus swelled until language broke apart, and the sound became a low, steady hum, the vibration of every timeline finally sinking. I held the mirror to my chest. Its warmth seeped into my ribs, and the hum inside me joined the one outside. For a moment, everything aligned. The horn, the breath, the heartbeat, the silence. The mirror glowed faintly and dissolved, leaving a faint circular mark over my sternum, as if the road had stamped me with its seal. When I looked up, the oak stood in front of me again, its branches heavy with light, its trunk hollowed out into a doorway. Through that hollow I could see another road, cleaner, narrower, no headlights waiting, a place where time moved normally, or pretended to. I stepped closer. The air around the doorway shimmered, showing reflections like water. Each one was a possible ending. Me walking away, me disappearing, me staying to guide someone else. But all the reflections had one thing in common: the absence of fear. Maybe that was what the crossroads wanted all along. Not repentance, not confession, just recognition. I took a breath, my first free one in years, and stepped through the hollow. The world blinked. I was standing at the edge of a different road, morning light spreading like milk across the sky. The oak behind me was just a tree now, old, silent, harmless. Birdsong fluttered in the branches. The headstone was still there, but its carving was clear for the first time. Not ENA, as I remembered. It said SARAH, clean, new, precise. My own name, unburdened of guilt, carved not as a tombstone but as a record. Here stood the woman who remembered. I touched the letters. They were warm. The sound of an engine came from far away, real this time. Ordinary. The horn blared twice. High. Low. No pause. No loop. Just the passing of a truck going somewhere else. I smiled, though the motion felt unfamiliar. The road behind me glowed faintly, as if waiting for a final acknowledgement. "I remember," I said aloud. "And I release it." The air shifted. The hum dissolved. And for the first time, the crossroads didn't answer. You made it through the hour. 5 stories. 5 silences broken. And somewhere inside them, the sound of your own breath finding its rhythm again. The patients are sleeping now behind the soft walls of Street Jude's. The compasses stopped spinning in the woods. The knives have cooled. The silver ring hums softly, dreaming of another hand. In the crossroads it waits, patient as ever, for the next traveler who thinks choice is the same thing as escape. If the air in your room feels heavier than before, it's only because the stories haven't decided whether to leave yet. Whisper something back to them. A thank you, a good night, a promise you'll remember. And when you close your eyes, don't fight the static behind your heartbeat. That's not fear. That's the world, reminding you it's still there. Until next time, this voice and the quiet between us will be waiting. I'm your storyteller from Little Dream 1. Sleep deeply. Dream carefully, because every dream is just another road, and all roads, sooner or later, cross again.